Well, hello there. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Marvel with Adam Eve's Powers, Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Living in New York City is often viewed as a dream come true for countless individuals. For many, the allure of the Big Apple lies in its promise of grand opportunities, diverse cultures, and exhilarating experiences. However, beneath the shimmering glamour and bright lights, life in this bustling metropolis comes with its fair share of challenges. In 2008, New York State experienced a notable surge in crime rates, marking the first annual increase since the early 1990s. The city's overall violent crime rate climbed to 454.5 offenses per 100,000 residents, a concerning statistic for both locals and visitors. This rise in crime encompassed a range of offenses, including aggravated assaults, larceny, vehicle theft, robberies, murder, and rape. These crimes are not isolated incidents. They occur daily, affecting the lives of numerous individuals and leaving lasting scars on victims and communities. The consequences of such injustices extend far beyond the immediate aftermath, as many residents grapple with fear, trauma, and the need for safety in an urban landscape that can sometimes feel dangerously unpredictable. It was the dead of night in New York City, where a shroud of darkness enveloped the streets that rarely rested. The vibrant pulse of the metropolis continued its heartbeat. Taxis whizzed by, sirens wailed in the distance, and late-night wanderers meandered through the shadows, oblivious to the murky hours that cloaked the city. In a secluded alleyway, far removed from the warmth of streetlights, two men clad in dark clothing loomed ominously over a smaller figure. Their hooded faces were barely visible, but the menace in their posture was unmistakable. They unleashed a flurry of punches onto a man who appeared to be in his 30s, dressed in a cheap, ill-fitting suit that did little to protect him from the cold night air or the brutality of his assailants. Austin stumbled back against the damp brick wall of the alley, grunting in pain as he attempted to shield his face from the relentless barrage of blows. Each strike reverberated through his body, and a sharp pain shot through his lip as it split open, warm blood trickling down to stain his collar. Desperation flickered in his eyes as he sank to the ground, trying to gather his thoughts amidst the chaos. "Hellman, this bum only has 100 on him," one of the attackers, Chris, grumbled and tossed the now empty wallet on Austin's head. "I told you we should have gone for the other guy. He had designer shoes on." "Whatever, man. Let's grab his shoes and watch so we can bounce." The other criminal, Mac, said. "No, not the watch. It was my father's." Austin wheezed out and gripped his watch close to his chest. "Please." Yeah. Like I haven't heard that before," Mac mocked as he and Chris approached Austin. "Look, just give us the watch, or we'll knock all your teeth out." Suddenly, a protective barrier made of energy surrounded Austin. To their right, footsteps could be heard echoing down the alleyway, causing Chris and Mac to take a step back. "What the hell? Who is that?" Chris said and pulled out a pistol. "Show yourself." Emerging from the darkness, a figure clad in a striking red and white suit stepped into the dim light of the alley. The gleam of his polished helmet reflected the flickering streetlights, casting an almost ethereal glow. His flowing white cape billowed dramatically behind him, creating an imposing silhouette that momentarily bewildered Chris and Mac. Their eyes widened in disbelief, caught off guard by the sudden presence of this unexpected person dressed in vibrant colors. "Give up now, and no one has to get hurt," Atomic said, his posture tall and steady. "Damn this." Chris growled and pulled the trigger, only to blink in bewilderment as his Glock 19 was now a childishly green toy gun that released a burst of bubbles. What is this?" Before he knew it, a metallic thud echoed behind him. Spinning on his heel, Chris found that his partner's clothes had been turned into blocks of iron. "Mac. I can't move. Chris. Help me." Mac yelled in surprise as he struggled to move his limbs. Unfortunately, he was only able to move his hands, feet, and head uselessly. "Witchcraft. This shit is witchcraft." "Not really. I just transmuted your clothes' atomic makeup into iron." "Not a big deal," Atomic said and sent out a glowing fist the size of a basketball crashing into Chris's stomach. The man quickly crumpled to the ground, holding his stomach. Another flash burst around Chris and Mac, leaving them both trapped in rope. Now sit tight for NYPD's finest to come pick you up. After dismissing the protective barrier around Austin, Atomic crouched down and helped the man to his feet. Noticing the bruises covering Austin's body, Atomic closed his eyes and focused. Although Atomic couldn't manipulate or affect living sentient life forms directly, he still possessed the remarkable ability to perceive their atomic structure just as he could with inanimate objects. This heightened perception enabled him to perform what was essentially a rapid MRI scan, allowing him to assess the internal condition of an individual's body. To further refine his anatomical skills and to deepen his understanding of the human anatomy, Atomic had immersed himself in a variety of medical textbooks meant for those training to get into the medical field. These resources provided him with a comprehensive grasp of human anatomy, physiology, and common ailments, enhancing his ability to correctly identify any injuries and health issues within any person. Good, no internal injuries or broken bones. Atomic thought and deactivated his scan. Your injuries are only surface level. Once the ambulance gets here, they'll treat your surface wounds. You'll be fine, Atomic said as he helped Austin sit down on the wooden chair he created with a flick of a finger. Austin wasn't sure what to say. Atomic's bright suit and sudden appearance were throwing him off. Not to mention the pounding pain he felt from the beating he received. Okay. Thank you. For helping me. Don't mention it. It's what I do, Atomic said. Hey, you. Wanna be Power Ranger? Let us go, you bastard. Let me go. Max and Chris's yells were quickly silenced as Atomic slapped duct tape over their mouths. Humph. That's better. Atomic nodded. In the distance, police sirens could be heard. Don't worry about these guys. They can't hurt you anymore. Just as Atomic was about to fly off, Austin spoke up. Austin was an ambitious new stockbroker eager to make a name for himself. However, due to his inexperience and low financial standing, he faced mistreatment at his company. Determined to advance his career, he devoted himself to his work and absorbed as much knowledge as he could to climb the corporate ladder. This intense focus left him unaware of significant events unfolding in New York, including the emergence of Iron Man, the Harlem attack, and Atomic's debut during that incident. Who are you? Austin asked. A friend, Atomic said and shot up into the night sky, leaving Austin, Mac, and Chris to watch him leave a trail of light from the ground. Atomic let out a weary sigh, his shoulders tired as he willed his large, glowing hand construct to dissipate into nothingness. The moment the radiant energy faded, the 3 car thieves he caught earlier tumbled unceremoniously to the pavement, landing in awkward heaps just in front of a bustling police station in the heart of Manhattan. Their wrists and ankles were tightly bound with shimmering energy restraints, effectively halting any attempt to flee. At the sight of the crashing would-be thieves, 2 officers came out of the station. Their surprised expressions watched as Atomic floated in the air. A thin layer of red energy glowed around his body. After giving the officers a brief salute, he blasted off into the sky. As he flew over the city, Atomic couldn't help but reflect on how he no longer needed the thrusters beneath his feet and hands to fly. Throughout the 2 months he spent training, Atomic had experimented with several methods on how to improve his flight capabilities. His battle with the abomination had shown him that the way he flew wasn't optimal for quick changes in direction and using his constructs. He knew it was possible. Adam Eve herself could do it easily in Invincible. But as he was, Atomic couldn't. No matter what he did, he couldn't perfect that style of flight. This left him to explore other methods and possible techniques to fly. Several of which had ended up in failure, and with him covered in bruises, but after countless hours of hard work, he found the perfect method to fly that suited him best. Atomic's new method that enabled his new aerial mobility without having to rely on his limbs for propulsion like before was achieved through surrounding himself with a unique energy field. This energy field operated by generating a constant thrust at a subatomic level in all directions, manipulating particles smaller than atoms to propel him through the air. At the same time, he also decreased the air density within a 2-inch radius around himself, effectively creating a localized environment that minimizes any air resistance around his body. This combination of thrust generation and reduced air density enabled Atomic to navigate effortlessly along the horizontal, X, and vertical, Y, axes, as well as the rotational, Z, axis. Of course, Atomic had realized that this new method of flight was significantly more complicated than his previous version, but it was what worked for him at his current level. Not only that, but after he perfected his new method of flight, Atomic's mind ended up thinking of another possible technique he could theoretically create. In his fight with Abomination, Atomic had increased the density of the air around the gamma-powered Mun to keep him locked in place. Similar to how Adam Eve held Conquest in place during the Viltrumite invasion of Earth in the Invincible universe. Conquest, being a vastly stronger opponent who was capable of destroying entire cities in seconds with ease, meant that Atomic had no trouble keeping the Abomination, a being nowhere near as strong as Conquest, frozen in place. With this in mind, Atomic couldn't help but wonder if he could somehow recreate Gojo Satoru's Infinity technique himself. It wouldn't be precisely the same, but if he could somehow recreate the technique close enough to where he could have a protective layer around him at all times, Atomic would be nigh untouchable to all physical attacks. With this new possible technique in mind, Atomic had tried everything he could think of on how to create it. But in the end, no matter how many hours or ways he tried to develop the technique, it always resulted in failure. Regardless of his shortcomings at creating his own version of the Infinity technique thus far, Atomic was sure he could one day succeed in developing it. We have a call on a 10-34 coming from West 56th Street in Hell's Kitchen. Requesting dash. Atomic let out a deep sigh as the static crackle of the built-in police radio in his helmet pierced through his thoughts, alerting him to yet another reported crime. In a sprawling metropolis like New York City, the relentless tide of lawlessness seemed never-ending. And after 7 hours of patrol, the weight of his fatigue tugged at him, his muscles ached and the city lights began to blur together in his peripheral vision. Regardless of his tired state, Atomic moved without hesitation. He spun around and burst through the sky toward the vibrant yet treacherous streets of Hell's Kitchen. As the night went on, Atomic flew all throughout the city to help as needed. 8:35 p.m., in a secluded corner of Central Park, a group of men surrounded a lone late-night jogger. Atomic arrived at the scene just in time, a glowing shield forming before him and the jogger. As the assailants approached, he materialized a shimmering barrier, causing their fists to rebound harmlessly off it. With a wave of his hand, the air crackled, and the attackers found their shoes glued to the ground. Grateful, the jogger sprinted away as Atomic ensured the men remained stuck until the authorities arrived. 10:43 p.m., at a street corner on the Upper West Side, a car careened into a crosswalk straight for two college students. Atomic was there in a flash. His palms raised as he conjured a protective wall of energy that halted the vehicle inches from its intended target. The driver, bewildered and drunk, stumbled from the car while the students escaped unscathed, their faces reflecting shock and then relief. They turned to Atomic, giving their thanks as he faded back into the night. 12:12 a.m., on the rooftops, a desperate chase played out as a woman fled from a relentless pursuer. Atomic had been observing from a distance, and with a burst of energy, he flew onto the scene, blocking the thug's path with a glowing barrier. At the next moment, he sent a surge of shimmering energy that knocked the Mun off his feet and crashed into a wall. Atomic continued his work as New York's newest hero through the night. In order to keep up, he made sure to take small breaks to rest and eat when he had time, but otherwise, he was flying and stepping in when needed. Each new interaction helps improve his control over his powers and increases his experience. As dawn began to break over New York City, the horizon glimmered with the promise of a new day. Atomic rested on the edge of the Empire State Building and watched the sunrise. "I never noticed before, but is that the Baxter Building?" Atomic muttered between bites of his chicken sandwich. Wyatt took a leisurely sip of his iced coffee, the cold beverage a refreshing contrast to the warm afternoon sun that bathed the patio of his favorite coffee shop. He tipped his head back slightly, enjoying the quiet hum of conversation around him before flipping the page of the book in his hands. On the table in front of him, a small stack of weathered books sat in wait. He was dressed in a comfortable, faded t-shirt and well-worn jeans. His baseball cap sat snugly on his head, casting a shadow over his eyes, while the thick-rimmed, non-prescription glasses he wore served to obscure his identity and give him a thoughtful appearance. "Would you like another one, Wyatt?" One of the coffee shop employees, Greg, asked, seeing Wyatt's now empty cup. Greg is a young college student who works part-time to help cover his education costs at Empire State University. He and his co-workers at the coffee shop have grown accustomed to seeing Wyatt, who visits almost every day. Wyatt is their favorite customer because he consistently leaves generous tips. Stephanie, another employee and a struggling student, was thrilled when he once left her a $200 tip and nearly hugged him in appreciation. "Yeah, if you don't mind," Wyatt said and gave Greg a smile in appreciation. Greg nodded and walked into the building. Wyatt turned back to his book on agriculture and agronomy. His eyes moved quickly down the page, and his brain swiftly absorbed the knowledge, thanks to his eidetic memory and processing speed. Gotta make sure I know my stuff. I don't want to create monster plants or any other eldritch monstrosity by accident. Wyatt thought with a slight chuckle. You know, you're a tough person to track down, Wyatt Wilkins. Or do you prefer atomic? Phil Coulson said with a friendly smile as he took a sip of his own black coffee. He was sitting at the table behind Wyatt, shocking the young reality warper at his sudden presence. What the? When did he get there? Then again, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that S.H.I.E.L.D. found me. It was only a matter of time. Wyatt frowned and turned to face the Mun. Holy shit, it's Phil Coulson. Christ, he really is just a kid. Phil thought, maintaining his calm and friendly expression as the two eyed one another. Huh? What are you talking about? Wyatt said innocently, his book now closed. While it would be very cool to be a superhero, I'm not atomic. You got the wrong guy, mister. I'm Agent Phil Coulson. I'm with the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement, and Logistics Division. Phil said. You've done a great job of throwing us off, Mr. Wilkins. That was a mouthful. Still, you seem like a nice guy, Agent Coulson, but I'm not atomic. That guy is probably out there saving a cat from a tree. I'm just trying to get my education. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to leave. Wyatt said and stood up. I would have believed that if it weren't for the fact that you stopped attending school 2 years ago and aren't taking any courses anywhere, Phil said. Listen, I'm not here to detain you, I just want to talk. As Wyatt packed his books into his backpack, he finally noticed something he had overlooked all this time. Throughout the street, several people remained in the same spots where they had originally been ever since he had arrived. Usually, this wouldn't be an odd sight and would have gone unnoticed by an ordinary person. However, after 3 hours of those same people not moving too far from their original positions, it was clear they were there for a reason other than simply enjoying the sights that Midtown had to offer. You say that, but with the number of your fellow agents here, I find that hard to believe, Wyatt muttered, dropping the ignorant act. Turning to the coffee shop, he noticed that all the customers and employees were gone, as were the people on the street. You guys move quickly and quietly. No wonder Greg never came back with my drink. The staff and other customers weren't harmed, if that's what you're thinking. The other agents were just a precaution, Phil said as he moved to sit across from Wyatt. Listen, Mr. Wilkins, I believe you're genuinely trying to do good. I can see that in all the people you've helped over the past 3 months. Yet you and a team of super-secret agents come to say hi while armed to the teeth, Wyatt said. While Phil had been talking, he had sent a pulse of energy throughout the immediate area, around 20 meters out, to determine what weapons or gadgets S.H.I.E.L.D. brought to greet him. With his scan now over, Wyatt frowned at the large number of weapons that were brought to take him down in case things went south. Look at all those guns. That's not very nice, Agent. What? Were they out of gift baskets at the gift shop? Wyatt said. Phil blinked slowly, a smile creeping across his face. Years of dedicated service with S.H.I.E.L.D. had honed his ability to read people, turning subtle cues into vivid revelations on who they were. As he observed Wyatt, the young boy's body language spoke volumes. There wasn't a trace of fear or hostility in his posture. The young 16-year-old exuded a remarkable calmness, standing with a relaxed confidence that belied the tense situation around him. It was evident to Phil that Wyatt's unique abilities contributed to his composure, enabling him to remain unflappable in the face of the agents encircling him. Stand down. I'll take it from here, Phil said as he held a finger to his earpiece. Agent Coulson? Surely you're not serious. One of the many agents asked. I'm sure. Wyatt watched as the surrounding agents all left one by one, leaving him and Phil alone outside the coffee shop. Wow. You must be pretty up there in this organization of yours. Wyatt said and tried to take a sip of his drink but found it empty. In a flash, his drink was refilled. Want me to top yours off, Agent Coulson? Phil blinked in astonishment, seeing Wyatt's abilities firsthand. It was completely different from watching them on tape. Ah, no. I'm fine, Phil said. Let's get straight to the point. I don't want to take up any more of your time. We understand that your identity is very important to you. Rest assured, only a small handful of people in S.H.I.E.L.D. know that Wyatt Wilkins is atomic. You have my word on that. Now, on to why we're here. It's quite simple. We want to get a clear idea of your agendas and determine if we can trust you to continue operating as you have been. You want to know if I'm a threat or not? Wyatt said, taking a slow sip of his drink. Don't worry. I don't have any grand plans of world domination or terrorizing anyone. Well, that's not true. I do plan on terrorizing the criminal element in the world. The world? You plan on operating outside of New York? Phil asked. I do. I plan on helping everyone. Not just New Yorkers. Not just those in the United States. I want to help everyone on this little green and blue planet of ours. That's my agenda, Agent Coulson. Wyatt smiled, his words genuine. Wyatt meant every word he said. 3 months ago, when he first began his career as Atomic, he never anticipated how fulfilling this path would be. At first, the thrill of using his powers to confront thugs and criminals provided an immediate rush, a sense of justice served with each encounter. However, as time passed, he discovered that the real reward lay far beyond the adrenaline. What filled him with true satisfaction was the knowledge that he was making a tangible difference in people's lives. The moments he spent helping those in need, offering hope and change with his own 2 hands, became the driving force behind his actions. It was in those profound yet straightforward interactions that he realized he was not just fighting against injustice, he was actively shaping a better future for others. Wyatt couldn't shake the feeling that he was experiencing the same internal pull that many superheroes in fiction had faced. In the past, he had always been puzzled by what motivated these caped crusaders to put on their masks day after day, battling villains and facing seemingly insurmountable odds. The answer was a mixture of a deep sense of duty, an innate desire to protect the vulnerable, and the hope that his actions could inspire change. At that moment, he understood that heroism wasn't just about grand gestures or superhuman powers. It was about the courage to stand up for what was right, even when the outcome was uncertain. Wyatt was acutely aware that he would not have reached this profound conclusion so swiftly were it not for the unique gift of possessing 2 lifetimes of memories. In his younger years, he might have succumbed to the temptations of his powers, wielding them selfishly, perhaps to settle scores with a world he felt had turned its back on him. The anger and pain from his past could have easily driven him to use his abilities as weapons rather than tools for change. Conversely, in his elder years, Wyatt might have used his powers with an air of authority but without a proper understanding of the responsibility that came with that immense capability. He would have been like a child with a shiny new toy, oblivious to the potential for harm it could cause. Driven by impulse and ego, he might have made choices that were more about self-aggrandizement than genuine service to others. Now, however, Wyatt found himself in a unique position. By merging the wisdom and sense of responsibility gleaned from his older self with a raw, unfiltered understanding of life's hardships and the deep heartache from losing his family that marked his younger self, he had transformed into someone fundamentally different. He realized that he could no longer afford the luxury of selfishness or arrogance. Instead, he embraced the difficult truth that he needed to elevate his purpose, becoming a symbol of hope in a world fraught with danger and suffering. Similarly to one of his other idols. Each challenge he faced only deepened his resolve to act as a force for good, a protector advocating for those who had none. Even with all this in mind, Wyatt understood that he wasn't perfect, everyone was flawed in their own way. He was sure he'd make several mistakes on his path as Atomic. But that recognition didn't deter him. Instead, it fueled his determination to strive to be better. With every decision and every action, he aimed to honor the complexities of his past and the promise of his future. Phil remained silent for a long time, allowing Wyatt's words to wash over him as he contemplated their meaning. The young hero's passionate speech lingered in the air, filling the space between them with a palpable energy. Gradually, a smile crept across Phil's face, a mix of admiration and understanding softening his expression. Rising to his feet, he reached into his pocket and retrieved a small, elegantly designed card, its surface gleaming faintly under the dim light. With a steady hand, Phil extended it toward Wyatt, his gaze filled with encouragement. "I think I've heard enough," he said, his voice warm and assuring. "Good luck, Mr. Wilkins. I hope you succeed in your mission. Take this. It's in case you ever need help." Wyatt took the card, watching as Phil walked down the street until he was out of sight. After a quick scan, he confirmed that the card was free of any tracking devices. With a slight smile at having met the man who brought the future Avengers together, Wyatt placed the card securely in his pocket. However, a feeling of unease settled over him like a heavy cloak. The knowledge that some members of S.H.I.E.L.D. were now aware of his true identity, and, by extension, even Hydra, was deeply unsettling. He had tried to keep his identity a secret by taking extra precautions, such as changing into his suit out of sight of any cameras and following convoluted paths home to evade potential followers. Yet, he realized he must have made a mistake at some point that led S.H.I.E.L.D. to discover him. Despite this, he knew there was little he could do at this point other than to keep moving forward. While his abilities were developing rapidly, giving him a newfound sense of power and confidence, he understood that this did not make him invulnerable. Every move had to be calculated, and every interaction measured, especially with S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra now on his heels. I hope Coulson was telling the truth when he said only a few people know who I am. Wyatt thought with a sigh. Grabbing his books and backpack, Wyatt left the coffee shop. Before he left, he placed a white envelope with cash for his bill and a generous tip for Greg under a plate. In a cozy and inviting home nestled in the heart of Queens, 15-year-old Peter Parker sat in his kitchen's breakfast nook, adjusting his round glasses with a hint of absent-mindedness. The early morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the room, filled with a faint smell of freshly brewed coffee. As he cradled a bowl of cereal, his attention was suddenly captured by the lively chatter of the morning news anchor. He sat up straighter, forgetting the spoonful of flakes in his hand as a striking red and white figure flashed across the screen, sparking a rush of excitement and curiosity within him. "No way, it's Atomic," Peter said excitedly, gaining the attention of his aunt, May Parker. She turned to the small television set in the kitchen and watched as a reporter interviewed several New Yorkers. "Hello, I'm Christine Everhart with WHIH World News. I'm in New York this morning to share several interviews I've conducted with those whom the new elusive hero, Atomic, has saved." Christine, a young and attractive woman with blonde hair, said to the viewers. The image changed to show two young men standing on a street corner. "We were out in the city bar hopping when all of a sudden, these four thugs cornered us. They were really scary looking and wanted our money and shoes." One of the young men, Carlos, said. "Right before they were about to jump us, Atomic swooped down and made these giant glowing hands and smacked them away." Jeff, the second young man, nodded. "Yeah. It was so awesome. Atomic even said he liked my shoes." "Like, what? How awesome is that?" The image changed again to show a middle-aged woman with sunglasses, Lucy. In her hands was a small white dog. "So there I was, walking my precious little darling here out of Prospect Park, when this idiot driving a Camaro almost ran us over. I was so terrified for my little princess. But right before that imbecile hit us, Atomic landed between us and lifted the Camaro into the air. Like, can you believe that?" Once more, the image changed to a balding man wearing blue overalls, Marco. He stood in front of a brand new glistening mechanic shop. "Okay, so I was coming back to my shop, Little Marcos off Greenwich Avenue, after my lunch break. But when I arrived, I found it on fire. My entire livelihood was burning right before my eyes." Marco sniffed dramatically before continuing. "It was then that Atomic landed from the sky. He literally doused the flames. But he didn't stop there. He did this wave gesture, and my burnt shop was restored to its original condition, just as it was when I opened it 15 years ago. Let me tell you, at first, I didn't like the guy. But after that, he's all right in my book." A series of engaging interviews unfolded, each offering a glimpse into the diverse experiences involving Atomic. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as each new clip was revealed, showcasing unique individuals eager to share their personal stories and encounters with Atomic. Their passionate and insightful voices painted a vivid picture of the impact Atomic had on their lives. Peter, wholly engrossed in the unfolding stories, wore an expression of boundless excitement as he absent-mindedly stirred his cereal, now a mushy mess in his bowl. Initially, he was elated to discover that his hero, Iron Man, was none other than Tony Stark, one of the intellectual giants he deeply admired. But just as he was savoring that revelation, the emergence of Atomic swept onto the scene, captivating the public's imagination less than a month after Iron Man's debut. "Peter? What are you still doing here, sport? You're going to miss the bus. Not to mention that field trip you were so excited for," Benjamin Parker said as he stepped into the kitchen. "Oh, man. You're right. Sorry, Aunt May, I have to go." Peter exclaimed as he left his bowl of mushy cereal and grabbed his backpack, rushing out of the house. "See you later. Have a nice day." May called out, but Peter was already out the door. "That boy. He reminds me of Richard more and more each day," Ben said as he took a seat at the table. May walked over and placed a cup of freshly brewed coffee down in front of him. Which reminds me. I wonder how that boy is doing." "Who are you talking about, sweetheart?" May asked as she sat down. "Oh, nothing. Just someone I met at a park a while back." As Peter ran alongside his departing bus, he was unaware of the events that would unfold that day, events that would change the course of his life forever. Wyatt and a small group of fellow his New Yorkers gathered outside a bustling electronics store, their eyes glued to one of the large television screens prominently displayed in the glass window. The screen flickered with vibrant colors, broadcasting a live news feed from the Senate Armed Services Committee in Washington, D.C. The central focus of the committee's discussion was the potential acquisition of Tony Stark's Iron Man armor by the U.S. government. "Because I'm your nuclear deterrent. It's working. We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor," Tony Stark said and rose to his feet. His hands were raised, and he held out peace signs for the large crowd of government officials around him. "I've successfully privatized world peace." At his declaration, everyone in the room stood and gave Tony a standing ovation. "What more do you want? For now. I tried to play ball with these ass clowns," Tony said and turned to motion to the committee members. "Beep, you, Mr. Stark. Beep, you, buddy. We're adjourned. We're adjourned for today," Senator Stearns said with barely hidden anger. His profanity ended up being bleeped by the television broadcast. "You've been a delight. Man, Tony Stark is such a boss," one of the onlookers said with wide eyes. "I don't know. If he doesn't even listen to the government, who does he answer to?" Another more cautious onlooker said. "Man, to hell with the government." With a roll of his eyes, Wyatt walked away from the heated argument. He didn't care to hear two people argue their points. Still, it's good that things are still following the events from the MCU. At least things are still going as I expected. It shouldn't be too long before the attack on the Stark Expo happens. Gotta keep an eye on that, Wyatt thought as he reached an intersection. He and several others waited for the light to allow them to cross. "Now then, what should I wear to that party Kitty invited me to?" Yesterday, Wyatt received an unexpected call from Kitty, who excitedly informed him that she and several other students from Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters were organizing a party at the mansion. Wyatt couldn't help but find it a bit peculiar that Charles Xavier was allowing such a social event to take place. After all, the mansion was not just a school, it was a sanctuary for young mutants, and wild parties were far from the norm. Despite his initial reservations, Wyatt couldn't help but be excited about it. It had been months of relentless work and dedication to his responsibilities as Atomic. The weight of it all had begun to take a toll on him, and he realized he was in dire need of a small break. The thought of reveling with a few friends he had made, letting loose, and enjoying some much-needed fun was exactly what he needed. So, he set aside his concerns and looked forward to a night of laughter, dancing, and perhaps even a little mischief at the mansion. Which reminds me, I need to bring Logan a thank you gift. If it weren't for him, I'd resemble a crumbled soda can, Wyatt thought with a chuckle. Without warning, a squad of police cars, their sirens blaring and lights flashing like urgent beacons, rushed past Wyatt's right, racing after a speeding vehicle that wove dangerously through the streets. The high-pitched wail of the sirens pierced the air, drawing the attention of curious onlookers who paused mid-conversation, their eyes widening in surprise. They gathered on the sidewalks, a mix of bewilderment and excitement on their faces, as the high-speed chase unfolded before them, engines roaring and tires screeching. "It never stops," Wyatt muttered and jogged into an alleyway. After making sure there weren't any people or cameras in sight, Wyatt's suit shimmered over him. Now in costume, Atomic shot up into the sky and flew after the speeding vehicles. As he flew over the city streets below, the people underneath looked up to see him fly past them with a stream of red light trailing behind him. "Look! It's Atomic! Holy shit! Marry me!" Atomic tuned out the voices below him, deliberately ignoring the cacophony of screams and shouts that pierced the air. His eyes remained locked on his target, an elusive vehicle weaving through the early morning traffic. The car maneuvered deftly, swerving past startled commuters and avoiding the increasing number of police cars that trailed behind it like a pack of hungry wolves. Inside the speeding vehicle, Flint Marco and Alexander O'Hearn exchanged gleeful glances, their laughter ringing out amidst the tension. Their eyes gleamed with excitement as they eyed the bags of cash piled high on the back seats, each bag bulging with ill-gotten gains. The thrill of their successful heist intertwined with the adrenaline of the chase, fueling their bravado as they reveled in their audacious escape. Ha! Talk about a score. Alexander laughed as Flint turned the corner with a drift, almost hitting a jogger, were it not for a glowing hand pulling the jogger back. Hey, did you see that? Flint asked as he looked at his rearview mirror, only to see nothing but the chasing police cars. What are you talking about? I don't see nothing. Alexander said and turned to look back. With their attention fixated on the commotion behind them, they were oblivious to the woman maneuvering a stroller across the street. It wasn't until the horrifying realization struck that they sensed the danger, and all they could do was scream in unison with the terrified mother. Flint slammed his foot down on the brake, but the tire screeched in protest, unable to overcome the speed he had been driving at. Time seemed to stretch as the inevitable collision loomed closer, a heart-stopping moment suspended in dread. In an instant, a shimmering barrier of vibrant energy enveloped the woman and her child and pulling them safely above the ground, casting an ethereal glow around them as Atomic descended gracefully from above. With a precise and commanding wave of his hands, Flint and Alexander's vehicle shifted. It transformed into smoke, sending plumes of dust spiraling into the air and propelling the two criminals forward at breakneck speeds. As they hurtled through the air, Atomic's deft movements culminated in a dazzling flick of his wrist. Suddenly, a massive, glowing catcher's mitt materialized, stretching out like an unyielding shield, ready to intercept them. It snared both criminals midair, their startled expressions frozen in disbelief as they were caught as if they were baseballs. You okay? Atomic asked as he gently placed the woman onto the ground. He also looked over the child, finding him to be okay. She nodded silently and quickly moved to check on her baby. Oh, thank God. Thank you. Atomic nodded firmly, his focus unwavering as he gently assisted the woman in getting away from the street. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief, and her limbs seemed to move sluggishly as if her mind was struggling to process what had just happened. Keep an eye on them, Atomic instructed one of the bystanders, a young man who quickly nodded in response, his expression serious at Atomic's command. Around them, a crowd had begun to form, captivated by the scene unfolding before them. Several individuals were extending their phones, capturing the moment in pictures and videos, their murmurs of disbelief punctuating the air. In the back, Flint and Alexander tried to escape with their bags of money but were quickly foiled as their money transformed into large snakes made of steel chains. They wrapped themselves around their bodies and, with a jerk, brought them down to the ground. Hey, that was our score. Alexander yelled but was quickly silenced as the very air around him and Flint grew exponentially heavy. It pressed them into the ground, causing them to struggle to take a breath. You too. Do you know what you almost did? You almost killed an innocent woman and her child. And for what? Money. Atomic said lowly, causing both Alexander and Flint to sweat. What were you thinking? That was an accident. We didn't mean to. Flint struggled to say. Atomic remained silent and lifted the pressure from them. He turned to the police, who had finally arrived. Freeze! One of the officers yelled, his gun raised. On the ground. Now. Hey, don't you know who he is? Shouted a young woman from the crowd. Her short, scruffy black bob cut framed her face, accented by vibrant violet streaks in her bangs. With determined brown eyes, she pointed toward the figure standing defiantly before the officers. That's Atomic. He just saved that woman and baby from danger and did your job for you. So how about you put down your guns and show some respect? The tension in the air shifted as her voice resonated with conviction, stirring the onlookers around her. One by one, more pedestrians joined in, echoing her support for Atomic. Their collective voices grew louder, transforming the once quiet scene into a cacophony of solidarity. The officers exchanged nervous glances, their expressions shifting from authority to uncertainty as they realized the strength of public sentiment rallying around the unexpected hero. Atomic looked around at the support he was receiving and smiled lightly behind his visor. With a small wave, the steel chains around Alexander and Flint transformed into handcuffs. "They're all yours," Atomic said to the police and began to hover in the air. He turned to the short-haired girl, 17-year-old Chihaya Gogo Tamago, and nodded at her before flying away. Gogo watched Atomic fly away with a grin. So cool. Once he was close enough to the ground below, Wyatt swooped down into the dense tree-line. With a swift motion, he transformed his outfit, donning a party-appropriate ensemble that featured a crisp, button-up shirt tucked neatly into tailored slacks. In his hands, he cradled a luxurious and very expensive box containing a bottle of the last drop 1970 Glenrothes single malt Scotch whiskey, a gift he had carefully chosen for Logan. With a final check to ensure his outfit was presentable, Wyatt stepped out from the shadows of the trees. As he emerged, the grandeur of the Xavier mansion came into view. However, the atmosphere felt different this time. The long driveway was alive with activity as streams of vehicles flowed in and out. Wyatt observed several teens climbing out of cars, their laughter and excitement echoing through the air as they were swiftly ushered inside the mansion. This couldn't possibly go wrong, Wyatt joked, heading to the front door. Reaching the front door, he heard the sound of loud music on the other side. After giving the door a firm knock, Wyatt came face to face with Evan Daniels. "Wyatt, welcome to Party Central," Evan said and motioned for Wyatt to enter. "Kitty, Kurt, look who's here." As Wyatt stepped inside the grand mansion, his eyes wandered through the opulent surroundings. The dimly lit foyer buzzed with energy as he spotted groups of teens gathered throughout the expansive room. Some were laughing and dancing to the upbeat music pulsating from the speakers, while others clutched colorful drinks in their hands and chatted animatedly in clusters. A few were gathered around tables laden with an assortment of tempting snacks, their laughter echoing off the ornate walls. "Wyatt, you made it." Kitty had a large smile on her face and ran to give Wyatt a large hug, causing him almost to drop the box of whiskey. Trailing behind her was Kurt, now in his human disguise, with a sandwich in hand. "Whoa. Did you bring alcohol? Nice." No. This is a thank you gift for Mr. Logan," Wyatt said, raising the box to display it. He looked around and found a severe lack of adults. Even Jean and Scott were missing. "Speaking of which, where is he?" "Logan is on a mission, so he won't be back for a while," Kurt said between bites. "Oh, by the way, it's me, Kurt. I'm in disguise," he whispered at the end. "Yeah, I figured that out by your voice. I guess I'll give this to the professor then." "Where is he?" Wyatt asked. Well, you see." Kitty chuckled nervously as she played with one of her bangs. "He's sort of out. But don't worry. We totally had permission to throw this party." Wyatt hummed a light tune, nodding slowly as he processed what Kitty had just said. He could see through her clear lie like a clear window, but he wasn't about to ruin the mood by being a stick in the mud. He was there to enjoy himself and reconnect with his friends. The majority of his interactions with them had been through their phones or the internet. With Kurt and Evan, the three of them became gaming buddies when they had free time to dive into online battles together. When it came to Kitty and Rogue, his interactions with them mainly revolved around playful exchanges of funny videos and memes through text. On the other hand, the young mutants had been keeping tabs on Wyatt's exploits as Atomic, already knowing that he was the elusive hero after learning how his abilities functioned. With each new appearance on the news or the internet, Kitty, Rogue, Evan, Kurt, and, by extension, everyone else in the mansion were left impressed with Wyatt's heroic actions. "I need to find a better work-life balance in my life. Otherwise, I'll end up burning out," Wyatt thought. Wyatt had wanted to visit his friends more often over the passing months, but he never realized that acting as Atomic would take up so much of his time. "Well, what do you know, it's Atom Boy himself," Rogue said as she walked into the room. She quickly grabbed him and pulled him towards the dance floor. As she did, she gave Kitty a playful grin. "Let's dance." "Hey, I wanted to dance with him," Kitty said and quickly followed behind them. The atmosphere of the party pulsed with energy as Wyatt found himself swept away by Rogue's enthusiasm. The dance floor was ablaze with swirling lights and the infectious beat of the music, drawing everyone into its magnetic pull. He could feel the rhythm vibrating through the polished floor beneath his feet. Rogue, with her hair bouncing as she moved, encouraged him to let loose. "Come on, Wyatt. Show us some moves," she teased, spinning around with a laugh. Caught up in the moment, Wyatt let his guard down, allowing the carefree spirit of the night to take over. He laughed and began to dance as well. Still, he made sure to keep the box of alcohol close to him. It wouldn't do him well to lose it around a bunch of irresponsible teens. Kitty joined them with an exaggerated twirl, her smile radiant. "You guys are terrible. Dance like no one's watching," she called out, playfully jabbing Wyatt in the side. Her contagious laughter fueled their enthusiasm, and soon enough, they were all caught up in a friendly dance-off, each trying to outdo the other with increasingly ridiculous moves. This is beyond cutting edge. Weber Torque, better known as Arcade to those within his inner circle, exclaimed as he deftly manipulated the intricate mechanisms of Cerebro's helmet. The bright lighting of the grand room illuminated the high-tech gadgets that surrounded him. His fingers danced over the controls with excitement. Beside him, Risty Wild stood silently, her eyes focused intently on the flickering screens, absorbing every detail of the unfolding operation. After a few moments of reconfiguring, the low hum of machinery filled the air as the computer systems began to recognize Weber's commands. "Yes. It worked!" he exclaimed, his grin stretching from ear to ear as the digital barriers dissolved before him, granting him access to the vast mainframe of Cerebro. "Suppose they have any games on there?" Risty asked, leaning over Weber. "Oh, I sure hope so." Weber grinned and delved deeper into the computer's files. As his fingers typed away, several windows containing large amounts of information on different individuals within Xavier's school popped into view. But in his excitement and misunderstanding, Weber believed these windows to be video game character profiles. "Who are those people?" Risty asked. "Who knows? Game characters, maybe." Weber said. "Cool. I sure could use those in my computer class assignment. Can you download that file?" "No problem, I'll burn you a DVD." Weber typed away, and after a few seconds, a disk tray popped open, revealing a fresh disk containing the school student profiles. "Here you go. Now, leave me alone. Arcade needs to concentrate," Weber said. Risty grinned at the CD in her hands. Okay. I'll just pop upstairs and make a quick appearance, then be back." "Okay, whatever," Weber said without a care, too entranced by the computer files and systems. He didn't pay Risty any mind as she walked out of the room, a sneaky smile on her face. "This sounds promising. Danger room." As the night progressed, Wyatt felt a wave of relief wash over him as he relaxed with his friends. Evan and Kurt emerged from the snack table, leftover chips dangling from their mouths. "We've got the snack game on lock," Evan declared proudly, holding a plate piled high with goodies. "Not as good as our dance moves, though." Kitty shot back, challenging the boys with a dramatic shimmy that brought a chorus of giggles from the nearby crowd. As the night wore on, they took a break to the side, breathless and bolstered by the party's energy. "This is exactly what I needed," Wyatt admitted, glancing at the glow of happiness illuminating their faces. "It's nice just to hang around a bunch of people my age instead of a bunch of thugs and criminals." "Yeah, no more atomic for tonight," Kitty whispered, nudging him with her shoulder. "Just Wyatt, the dancing machine." With that, everyone clinked their cups together, filled, of course, with non-alcoholic punch. But as they were about to head back to the party, Rogue's face stiffened as she heard several beeps from her wristwatch. "We've got a problem," she said. "You guys change pretty quickly. Are those suit slip-on onesies or something?" Wyatt asked as he ran beside Kitty, Evan, Rogue, and Kurt. They were all dressed in their X-Men uniforms, while Kurt reverted to his blue, furry appearance. Wyatt himself changed into a black and gray tactical version of his atomic suit, sans the cape and helmet. They were all running through the lower levels of the Xavier mansion on their way to the danger room. According to Rogue, there was some disturbance going off within the highly dangerous simulator room. "It's not really a onesie, it's more like a two-part thing, really," Kurt said. "Not now. We have to figure out what's going on. With as many people as there are upstairs, we have to stop whatever is going on before anyone catches on," Rogue said as they turned a corner. They all continued running and eventually reached the front doors of the danger room. They were sealed shut, but the sounds of explosions and crashes could be faintly heard. "Damn, Something is going on in there. I can't get the door open. Rogue said as all her inputs failed to register on the control panel beside the large doors. I'll just shut it down from inside, Kurt said. As he was about to teleport into the danger room, Wyatt placed a hand on his shoulder. Hold on, Kurt. It's not wise to jump into an unknown situation without first assessing it. If the systems are active, you could be running straight into danger, Wyatt said, drawing from his short but informative experience as a vigilante. Whoa, you could be right. Thanks for looking out, man, Kurt said to Wyatt, who smiled in response. Kurt blinked in surprise as he observed a noticeable shift in Wyatt's demeanor. Gone was the relaxed demeanor that he had all night. Instead, Wyatt stood tall and upright, his shoulders squared and broadened, radiating confidence and authority. This change didn't escape the notice of their friends, who exchanged curious glances, sensing the shift in the atmosphere surrounding Wyatt. If anything, it reminded them of Scott when he was acting as their leader. But somehow, more at the same time. Kitty, can you take a quick look inside and check if anyone is in the room? Wyatt asked Kitty, who quickly jolted out of her stupor. Why yeah. 1 SEC. She said and phased her body halfway through the doors. Once on the other side, she noticed that no one was inside the danger room. The chaos and destruction were emanating from the internal weapons and systems, which seemed to be going haywire. With nothing more to see, she pulled her body back. That's odd. No one's in there, but, it's as if the room is going crazy for some reason. That's weird. If no one is there, then why is the room going haywire? Evan asked. Either there's some sort of malfunction with the room systems, or... Rogue said, her eyes widening at her unspoken thought. Or there's someone in the control room, Wyatt said. Kitty, Kurt, and Evan all looked worried before turning to Wyatt and Rogue. We need to get to the control room. Fast. Follow me. Rogue said and began running down the hall. As the small group ran toward the control room's direction, several miniguns extended out of the walls and ceilings. In an instant, they began to shoot a volley of blasts in their direction. Wyatt frowned and summoned his helmet over his head. Behind me. All 4 X-Men ran behind Wyatt as he created a large barrier construct in front of them. The minigun's blast struck the barrier, but only to bounce harmlessly off it. With another wave of his hand, Wyatt sent out a wave of energy through the hall, transforming the miniguns into large plastic toys. Whoa, that's so cool. Evan said as they continued running. How much further? Wyatt asked. We're almost there. Rogue said. On their journey to the control room, the group encountered several additional obstacles. Obstacles that Wyatt, Evan, and Kurt took down with their powers. It didn't take much longer before they arrived at the doors of the control room. Not wasting any more time, Wyatt dematerialized the doors. No way. Is that Arcade? Kitty asked, surprised at seeing their classmate. Where did they go? Man, this AI is next level. Weber said with a childish giggle as he typed away. Jumping into the air, Wyatt flew up behind Weber and removed Cerebro's helmet from his head. Hey, it's still my turn. Weber hissed and turned around. He blinked in confusion, seeing Wyatt in his atomic costume. Whoa, what the hell? Aren't you lights out? Rogue said and placed a hand on Weber's neck, quickly knocking him out. How did he get in here? That's a good question. Everyone turned around to see a tired and angry Scott and Jean. They were also in their X-Men uniforms. Scott turned to Wyatt and was momentarily taken aback at his presence. You all have some explaining to do. Thanks, guys. Great party. A couple of Bayville High School's football players said before driving out of the mansion's driveway. Evan, Kitty, and Kurt waved goodbye until their last party guests were out of sight. Yeah, too bad we missed it, Evan said with a sigh. Man, they ate all the food while we fought for our lives. Kurt moaned as he held an empty tray. Yeah, and now we have to clean up after them, Kitty sighed as the 3 of them stepped through the grand entrance of the mansion. The foyer was a chaotic scene, a far cry from its usual elegance. Shattered remnants of furniture lay scattered across the marble floor, their splintered edges catching the light. Clusters of discarded trash, remnants of a wild party, formed grotesque piles in the corners. Sticky pools of spilled drinks and half-eaten food marred the once pristine floor. Kitty surveyed the mess with a mix of frustration and resignation. "Great," she muttered, crossing her arms as she prepared for the arduous task ahead. "It's all right, everyone. Leave this to me." Wyatt grinned and sent out a wave of his power. In a cascading shower of energy, the room reverted back to its clean and pristine state from before the party. "Dude, your powers are awesome," Evan said in awe and relief at not having to clean up the enormous mess. Kurt nodded alongside him and marveled at how everything was exactly as it was. Even the furniture was fixed as good as new. Kitty didn't say anything. She merely squealed and hugged Wyatt in appreciation. "You shouldn't have done that." Cleaning up this mess was their punishment, Scott said as he, Jean, and Rogue walked into the room. "What are you doing here, anyway? Was this party also your idea?" Kitty frowned and released Wyatt. Before she could speak, Wyatt stepped closer to Scott. They stood eye to eye thanks to their similar heights. Wyatt had a firm expression, while Scott's brows were furrowed. "I cleaned the mansion because I could and wanted to. That's what friends do. We help each other. And besides, before that arcade guy started messing with your easily hackable systems, everyone was making sure no one made a mess. So how about you cut them some slack?" Wyatt said, not appreciating Scott's attitude. "Okay, you two. Let's settle down," Jean said as she stepped between both young men. "What matters is that nobody got hurt. There will still be punishments going out for throwing a party, but let's not get into an argument, okay?" Wyatt and Scott continued eyeing one another for a few more seconds before nodding. "Whatever, let's go deal with Weber. He saw too much today, and we need to figure out how to handle him," Scott said. "Mr. Torque believes it was all a video game," Charles Xavier said as he rolled into the room, surprising all the students at his early arrival. "But to err on the side of caution, I removed his memories of the events of tonight. He should be on his way home now without any knowledge of his actions." "I'm sorry, Professor. I accept the blame for what happened tonight," Scott said with his head slightly bowed in shame. "Yeah, we're sorry." Kitty, Evan, Kurt, and Rogue all apologized while Wyatt thought over what Charles said. How ethical is it to remove someone's memories? Wyatt thought. I say there's plenty of blame to go around, even extending to a mystery guest. Charles said. "What? You mean arcade?" Jean asked. "No, someone else. Someone who orchestrated all of this, including my trip away, just to gain access to the mansion," Charles said as he eyed the tree line in the distance. Scott frowned at this, his gaze subtly shifting to Wyatt. "Wyatt, it's good to see you once again. I'd like to thank you for assisting my students tonight." Charles turned to Wyatt with a smile. "I'd been meaning to speak to you, but I didn't want to take you away from your activities as your alter ego." "Ah, don't mention it. My friends needed my help, of course, I would have pitched in," Wyatt said. "Very noble of you. Would you mind if we spoke in private? There's something I've wanted to share with you ever since I first discovered it. Please follow me into my office. Everyone else, head to your rooms. Be sure that I will come up with the proper punishment for tonight's party," Charles said as he began to lead Wyatt to his office. Wyatt heard a series of groans and whines as he walked away. Looking back, he noticed Scott and Jean gave him a suspicious look while Kitty and the rest waved goodbye. Well, considering tonight's events, I can't blame Scott and Jean for thinking I was suspicious. But I can't help but wonder what it was that the intruder wanted, Wyatt thought as he and Charles finally arrived at his office. "Please, take a seat," Charles said as he took his spot behind his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder labeled with Wyatt's name. "First, let me prepare you for what I have to say. You see, I have a friend in the New York Police Department, Officer Bradshaw. He's sympathetic to our kind and reaches out to me whenever there's a mutant arrest. This gives us the chance to step in and take any detained mutant in before the Department of Mutant Affairs steps in to take them away." "Bradshaw? That name sounds familiar," Wyatt said as he quickly recalled one of the officers who had tried to take him in at the hospital. "Oh, that officer. Yes, Officer Bradshaw was one of the officers who tried to detain you. After a quick investigation into the blood staining on your shirt, The police found that the blood on your shirt did not belong to you. At least, not completely. Another odd discovery they made was that your blood seemed to have evaporated after a certain amount of time. This leads me to believe that your blood must have some defense mechanism outside your body, Charles said. While mysterious, this side effect prevented the police from conducting a full exam to determine whether you possessed the X gene. But considering your actions while escaping custody, they likely have already classified you as a mutant. That's a lot to take in, Wyatt said, momentarily overwhelmed. Charles nodded and gave him a moment to absorb everything he had said. Once Wyatt had processed it all, he continued. On the day Cerebro discovered you, I had trouble determining whether or not you were truly a mutant. An odd case, but not impossible. Therefore, on the day we failed to unlock your full potential, I had taken the liberty to examine your blood, Charles added, his tone grave as he watched Wyatt's eyes widen. You see, Wyatt, you don't have the X gene. You are not a mutant. A group of 5 young children around the age of 12 could be seen pedaling their bikes through Central Park. Laughter and yells could be heard from them as they enjoyed themselves while under the bright sun. However, not all of the children were having fun. At the back of the pack, a boy wearing second-hand clothes struggled to push the pedals on his old, worn-down bike. Hurry up, Sam. Why are you so slow? The leader of the pack called out as he came to a stop, causing his followers to stop as well. I'm almost there. Sam called out, his face covered in sweat. This caused his friends to laugh at him as they watched him struggle. Why are you still driving that piece of junk? Just have your dad buy a new one. One of the boys chuckled. He's poor, remember? What a loser. Sam's eyes stung with a mix of frustration and embarrassment as he turned away from his friends, who were laughing as they pointed at him. He glanced down at his bike. The frame was not only rusted but also bent at awkward angles, giving it a lopsided appearance. The back wheel sagged, nearly flat, as if it had given up on him long ago. Its old chain had rough spots where rust had taken its toll, causing it to stick and lock up unexpectedly. The bike had been a gift that Sam's struggling father had given him on his birthday after months of begging from the young boy. Despite not having much money to spare, Sam's father had managed to scrounge up enough money to buy a bike from a pawn shop. While not an extravagant bike like his friends, Sam was still ecstatic to have received it from the man who had raised him all alone. Still, in his young, untested emotions, he couldn't handle being made fun of by his supposed friends. Sam's ears grew red, and his cheeks burned as he looked around the park to see a few people watching the scene with curiosity. The adult Sam was led to believe would act in situations like these did nothing but watch as he was laughed at. With tears swallowing his vision, Sam hung his head. He didn't want everyone to see him cry. Mysteriously, all the voices that once plagued the park hushed. The nearby chatters and his friends' laughter were nowhere to be heard. Curious about why everything had suddenly grown silent, Sam looked up and gasped. There, floating a few feet in the air, was Atomic in his red and white glory. His frame glowed lightly as he descended, cape bellowing. When his feet made landfall, the glow vanished. Atomic looked around at the adults in the park and then turned to Sam's friends. His gaze lingered longer on them, causing them to shift around uncomfortably. Within them, shame and guilt grew as the hero's unspoken message was delivered to their young selves despite their young age. After he was sure his message was received, Atomic walked over to Sam and kneeled in front of him. Hello there. I was flying in the area and sensed that I was needed. The hero said with a friendly voice. He then turned to Sam's bike. Wow. What a cool bike. Is it yours? Oh, yes, sir, Sam said nervously. That's awesome. Hey, what's your name? I'm Atomic, Atomic said as he placed a hand on Sam's bike. I'm Sam. Nice to meet you, Sam. Hey, what's your favorite color? Well, I like blue. Sam said, his left hand clutching his old blue shirt. Oh, what's yours? He asked, remembering his manners. Personally, I like red, Atomic said, motioning to his primarily red suit. But don't tell anybody, okay? That's our little secret. Sam smiled and nodded. After a brief moment, Atomic shifted and leaned on his knee. Being laughed at can be tough, Sam. That will never change as you grow older. But you need to remember to be proud of where you came from and who you are. Those people who laugh at you don't understand what you've been through. So you can't let them get to you. But I don't know if I can do that, Mr. Atomic, Sam mumbled, ignorant of the flash of light beside him. I know you can do it, Sam. Just believe in yourself. And if you can't do that, just believe in the me who believes in you. Atomic said and gave Sam a pat on the shoulder. He then stood to his feet and began to hover over the ground. It was nice meeting you, Sam. I hope you enjoy your new bike. With a wave, Atomic shot into the sky and disappeared. Sam blinked, confused by the hero's parting words, and looked over at his bike, only to gasp at what he saw. Gone was the old, beat-up bicycle with the bent, rusted frame and worn-down wheels. In its place was a sparkling new blue bike with chrome wheels and a cushioned seat. The chain was crisp and well-dialed, perfect for the various new gear shifts available on the bike. The bicycle even had an engraving of Sam's name alongside Atomic's logo. Sam's face lit up with a radiant smile as he examined his bike. His so-called friends looked on in awe and jealousy at what remained a mystery to everyone else, an expensive, expertly crafted bike. Onlookers nearby couldn't help but smile at the sight. They, too, desired something created by Atomic. Thank you, Sam called out. From that day onward, Sam lived his life with Atomic's words in mind. They pushed him to great heights and grand achievements. Wyatt? Hey. Earth to Wyatt. Serena growled and softly struck Wyatt over the head. He blinked and looked over to see her annoyed expression a few inches away from his face. You say something? Yeah, I did, you jerk. I asked what you thought of the movie. Serena asked as they exited the Apollo Theater, the two having just finished watching a, in Wyatt's opinion, bland action movie. I mean, I liked the special effects they used, but the main actor's performance was so wooden. Yeah, that's true. Remember the scene where he was supposed to be sad when his wife died? He looked more constipated than anything, Wyatt said as they walked through the now rebuilt streets of Harlem. All thanks to the hard work of New York's construction teams and a little help from Atomic himself. So you were watching the movie. You had that blank stare for so long that I thought you checked out. Is there something on your mind? Serena asked as she popped some of her leftover popcorn into her mouth. You see, Wyatt, you don't have the X gene. You are not a mutant. Charles said. Wyatt frowned at the memory. He had always known, deep down, that he was not truly a mutant. His abilities were merely a carbon copy of Adam Eve's, a person from a completely different universe than his own. Yes, universe. He refused to believe that he wasn't part of a greater multiverse. How else could he explain his arrival in a different version of the MCU, a universe already connected to the multiverse? If he lived in such a world, why couldn't the universe of Invincible exist as well? On the subject of his powers, Wyatt had always understood that he was not a mutant. No, his abilities didn't stem from a mutation in his genes. They likely came from whatever powerful being he had encountered. As for why he was chosen to inherit these abilities, Wyatt had no idea. Despite all that, he held a small glimmer of hope that he might be a mutant. Being a mutant would have given him a sense of belonging in a foreign world. It would have given him a place to belong in the world. A community. However, if Charles's test results were to be believed, Wyatt was not a mutant. He was nothing more than a lonely stranger in a new world. Wyatt couldn't help but ask, why? Why was he sent to this world? What was his true purpose? Fortunately, acting as Atomic had provided the perfect distraction from his situation. Being a hero and protector gave him something to focus on. Something to distract him. But when he wasn't in the role of Atomic, when he was just Wyatt, he often fell into deep thought. Wyatt had essentially died twice and was thrust into a fantastical, dangerous world without warning. He left behind a family he deeply cared about and loved, only to experience the heartache of losing another. After the loss his younger self experienced, he found himself reluctant to form new bonds. He barely cared for his foster family and had a severe lack of friends. If any. The closest he had to a male friend was Hector, a fellow orphan who helped him navigate through the streets of the city. Hector had also been the one who introduced him to the gang that ultimately got him killed. The Golden Vipers. Fortunately, Wyatt did have Serena and Luigi in his life. A tiny part of him saw them as his own family. They were good people, and their presence kept him grounded until his rebirth. Now, with his new friends at Xavier's school, Wyatt's previously abysmal social circle was slowly expanding. Hopefully, their opinion of him wouldn't change once they hear he's not a mutant like them. Despite this growth, he still couldn't shake the feeling of being a little lonely. "No, not really," Wyatt finally said, lying through his teeth. "I've just had a lot on my plate lately."
Really?
"Like what?" Serena asked as they were now halfway back to Luigi's restaurant, which Serena and her father lived above. "Actually, what do you do all day? You don't go to school, and you still haven't told me how you make your money. Wyatt, are you actually a drug dealer?" Wyatt responded by taking her popcorn and eating a handful, eliciting an annoyed yell. "How many times do I have to tell you? I don't sell drugs." "Then where do you get all your money? You didn't even let me pay for my ticket and food. And what's up with the muscles?" Serena said mischievously and poked Wyatt in his side. "You used to hate anything that involved hard work. And now you're hitting the gym? Who are you, and what have you done with the lazy, good-for-nothing Wyatt I knew a year ago?" Wyatt frowned as his mind flashed back to him being stabbed and having a heart attack. Events that had changed his life forever. "Nothing. He just grew up and adapted," Wyatt said. "And what's wrong with me treating you to stuff every now and then?" Before Serena could gather her thoughts to respond, she and Wyatt stopped dead in their tracks as Luigi's restaurant emerged into view. The once inviting storefront lay in complete disarray, its shattered glass windows glinting ominously in the fading daylight. Scattered chairs were tossed haphazardly across the sidewalk. Inside, the restaurant had descended into utter chaos. The vibrant walls, once adorned with cheerful murals of Italian landscapes, were now marred by streaks of spray paint. Tables were overturned and shattered dishes littered the floor. "Papa!" Serena yelled in horror as she and Wyatt sprinted into the restaurant, ignoring a few nearby observers. "Luigi! Where are you?" Wyatt yelled. As he was about to send a pulse of energy to scan the restaurant, Luigi walked around the kitchen doors. His face was bloodied and bruised. Seeing her father in such a state, Serena rushed to his side and hugged him tightly. Wyatt helped the man sit down on a chair. What happened? Who did this?" Serena said with a shudder, her hands inspecting her father's form as tears trailed down her face. "It's nothing, Serena," Luigi said unconvincingly. "Don't lie to me." Serena yelled. "I'll call the police," Wyatt said, but Luigi quickly grabbed his wrist. "No. No police." Luigi yelled. This froze Serena and Wyatt. They had never heard the usually jubilant men yell. "Papa, please," Serena begged. Luigi turned to his daughter and Wyatt. At the sight of their concerned faces, he broke. "A year ago, business was slow. We were on the verge of losing the restaurant. I was desperate. I ended up taking a loan. A loan I failed to pay back in time," Luigi said shamefully, his eyes glued to the floor. This was a warning," Wyatt uttered, his eyes scanning the damage. An icy chill was beginning to swell within his chest. "Yes, this was a warning. If I don't pay them back within a month, they'll..." Luigi's eyes moved around the shop and then to Serena before he turned away as if burned. "I should never have gone to them." Serena frowned. She was no fool. She understood the unsaid implications of her father's words. Even so, she smiled and hugged Luigi. "It's okay, Papa. We'll figure something out. Nothing is going to happen," she said. Luigi didn't reply. He merely hugged Serena back as if she would disappear any second. Wyatt observed the scene from the sidelines, his gaze fixed on the father and daughter. It felt as though he was intruding on their moment, but the chaotic surroundings dispelled that notion. He turned his attention back to the restaurant's shattered entrance, his heart racing in his chest. All Wyatt wanted was to put on his suit and go out to find those responsible for this mess, to make them pay for hurting Luigi and threatening Serena. The rage he kept under lock and key was beginning to rise once again. At the sound of a pained groan, Wyatt watched as Luigi grasped at his injuries. Seeing the man's injuries forced Wyatt to refocus. He knew it would be impossible to find those who did this. He had no idea what they looked like or what their names were. And he doubted Luigi would give him any more details. He had to focus on what he could do. After removing his backpack, Wyatt pulled out a first aid kit and began treating Luigi's injuries. He was glad he took the time to read all those medical textbooks and the books on survival. After Wyatt was done treating Luigi, he and Serena helped the injured man up into their home above the restaurant. Thankfully, whoever destroyed the restaurant had avoided their home, leaving everything intact. Much to Serena's relief. She wasn't sure if she could keep up her facade of strength if her home were also left in tatters. Entering Luigi's bedroom, they helped the man down so he could rest.
Hey, Wyatt? Could you stay tonight?
Serena whispered as they sat on the couch in the living room. She reached over and grabbed his hand.
I don't think yeah. I'll stay, Wyatt said softly.
He had never seen Serena in such a state. She had always been so confident, witty, and headstrong. But the events of tonight had shaken her to her core. "Thank you," she said and leaned her head on his shoulder. Wyatt felt no excitement at having her body pressed against his. He wasn't able to smell how Serena smelt of fragrant flowers. No, all he felt was how her body trembled. How her breath came out in shaky exhales. The way her tears soaked into his shirt. If Serena were to look up at Wyatt's expression, she would have seen an expression of cold, barely contained anger. It was the middle of the night, and Serena and Luigi were sound asleep in their bedrooms. Wyatt, who had taken up the couch, was the only one awake, unable to sleep. His gaze was fixed on the front door, like a sentry, waiting for any movement or a sound. But nothing came. He rubbed his eyes and stood. Quietly so as not to wake up anyone, Wyatt began to reinforce the walls, floors, windows, doors, and ceiling using several different durable and fireproof materials. Thin layers of steel were constructed between the wall's insulation and drywall. A process he repeated for the floors and ceiling. For the windows, he replaced the easily breakable glass panes with thick, bulletproof glass. Wyatt had even added a secret sprinkler system as well. A feature the home previously lacked. The front door was the trickiest. He had to recreate it using layers of steel and Kevlar, with a wooden outer layer to maintain appearances. The door frame, hinges, deadbolts, and locks were now also made of adamantium. It would take an enhanced human to try and force the door to budge even a little. The real challenge was keeping the weight relatively the same as before. Once he finished his work, Wyatt walked around and rechecked everything until he felt satisfied. The house looked exactly the same, but it was now one of the most secure homes in New York. "Try to break in now, you bastards," Wyatt muttered as he sank into the couch. Leaning forward, he began to formulate a plan to find the people who had attacked Luigi. He considered looking for any security camera footage in the area but quickly dismissed the idea. There was a severe lack of cameras nearby, and if there were any, they would most likely belong to a secret government agency. Next, he thought about laying in wait for them to return, catching them in the act. However, that would require time, and Wyatt's patience was running thin. So, he contemplated sweeping the streets and confronting every criminal and thug he could find. It would only be a matter of time before one of them had the information he needed. But this plan came with risks. He could end up alerting whatever loan shark Luigi had made a deal with, potentially scaring him off. Or they might figure out why Wyatt was after them and put out a hit on Serena or Luigi. He couldn't take that chance. Reluctantly, Wyatt concluded that waiting was his only viable option to find those responsible, a realization he despised. After deciding to get some rest, he sat down and closed his eyes. Sleep, however, eluded him that night. After helping to clean and reorganize the pillaged restaurant throughout the morning, Wyatt said goodbye to Serena and Luigi before heading out on patrol. Before he left, he made sure to tell Serena to call him if anyone suspicious came around. Although Serena was unsure of what he could do, she agreed nonetheless. She was too emotionally and physically exhausted to argue with Wyatt. As soon as he left, Wyatt, now dressed as Atomic, flew around the entirety of New York, eager to find any ongoing crimes or threats. Unfortunately, wherever he went, there was a severe lack of crime, much to his chagrin. "Where the hell are the crimes when you want them?" Atomic growled, his irritation growing as he continued his patrol. He couldn't help but feel as if fate in New York had it out for him that morning. That was until he finally found a hooded man pickpocketing wallets in Washington Square Park. In a flash, Atomic descended and grabbed the man with a large glowing construct. It wrapped itself around the man's torso tightly and lifted him in the air. What the hell?
I can't breathe. The man cried loudly.
The people down below watched in shock and listened as the man slowly began to choke as Atomic squeezed.
Hey, you got him.
Someone cried out, snapping Atomic out of his trance. Atomic blinked and immediately released his tight grip on the man, finally allowing him to take a deep breath. Atomic then turned to look at the confused and anxious expressions on the faces of the pedestrians below.
I'm sorry, Atomic said and dropped the thief to the ground.
The wallets he had stolen fell around him.
In a flash, Atomic flew away.
Gwen Stacy hummed to herself as she grabbed a chemistry book. After examining its contents, she smiled and placed it on top of the growing stack in her hands. After adjusting her glasses, she carried the large pile over to a free table. Gwen had always loved the library, with the New York Public Library being her favorite place to visit. There, she found an endless supply of books to read and study, which was one of her favorite pastimes. With a small smile, she opened one of her books and began reading. Time seemed to fly by as she absorbed the information on each page. She was only pulled out of her reading trance when someone dropped an even larger pile of books on the table behind her. Turning around, Gwen took in the boy's appearance. He was tall for his age, with unruly reddish-brown hair and vibrant green eyes. His outfit consisted of a red and white hoodie and jeans. What stuck out to her about his appearance were the dark bags under his eyes. Curious, Gwen looked over his choice of literature. All the books he had picked out were quite advanced, particularly for someone who looked like he was in his freshman or even sophomore year of high school. The books seemed more suited for seniors in advanced placement classes. At first, she thought he might just be trying to look smart with such advanced titles. However, when she saw him breeze through the books at unbelievable speeds, she sighed and shook her head. Instead of trying to look smart, he should try some of the introductory books, Gwen thought. As she was about to turn back to her own studies, she paused as the boy spoke in a barely audible whisper. Gwen was astounded. The boy wasn't even looking at his book, yet he was discussing concepts she was just beginning to grasp. His adept note-taking in his notebook only reinforced her impression that he truly comprehended the material that he was speed reading. He looks barely older than me. How can he study at such speeds? Gwen thought, her mouth unconsciously agape. In her distraction, her hand accidentally slipped, causing her stack of books to drop unceremoniously. Wyatt frowned and turned around to see Gwen panicking as she hurried to pick up her books. Without pause, he got up to help her. "Here, let me help," Wyatt said, glancing at Gwen's outfit. She wore a red, almost orange hoodie and a matching headband. A pair of glasses perched on her nose, and plain purple pants hung loosely around her legs. To Wyatt, she looked like a typical library nerd. Still, he thought she had a cute face and bright blue eyes. No. "It's okay," Gwen said, but it didn't stop Wyatt from assisting her. Once they had piled her books back on the table, Wyatt picked up her chemistry book. This one's a good read. I struggled a bit with the section on Schrödinger's equation and the section on wave function, but you just have to refer back to chapter 35 and reread paragraph 3 for it all to click," Wyatt said before blinking. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." "No. It's fine, really. I sorta skipped that part because I couldn't wrap my head around it," Gwen admitted as she flipped through the book. Following Wyatt's suggestion, her eyes widened with understanding. "You were right. That's amazing." "Not really. That's one of the easier concepts to grasp. Once you tackle quantum molecules and atoms, you'll face bigger challenges," Wyatt said with a slight smile. "I'm Wyatt, by the way." "Gwen Stacy," she replied, shaking his hand. She couldn't help but notice that his tired eyes grew wide for a moment. "Are you okay? You look exhausted." "Fine. I'm fine. I just didn't get much sleep," he said, rubbing one of his eyes. "Were you studying all night or something?" Gwen asked. "No, nothing like that. I just couldn't catch any Z's," Wyatt replied with a smile. "Would you like some help going over the material? If you need it, that is." "Really? You wouldn't mind? I'd hate to take you away from your own work." "It's not a problem. I'd love to help you," Wyatt said with a small smile. However, the events from that afternoon were still plaguing his mind. The way he had pressed down on the petty thief's chest and the looks people had given him was frozen in his memory. Wyatt had gone overboard and almost seriously hurt a man who didn't deserve such a punishment. To distract himself, he decided to head to the library and read to take his mind off everything. He certainly didn't expect to run into Gwen Stacy of all people at the library. However, upon reflection, he recalled seeing Gwen at the library on several occasions, studying and minding her own business as she delved deep into her studies. Well, okay. As long as you're sure, Gwen smiled as Wyatt picked up his stack of books and sat beside her. The two ended up studying together throughout the afternoon until the skies began to darken. Gwen enjoyed her time with Wyatt immensely. He had a knack for explaining the topics she struggled with and often cracked jokes that made her laugh. He reminded her of Peter at times. Eventually, the library had to close, ending their very productive study session. Outside, Gwen and Wyatt stood on the steps, watching people move in and out and as cars drove by. That was fun. Thanks for helping me, Gwen said, her hands clutching the straps of her backpack. There aren't that many people who I can discuss such complex topics with. Would you, I don't know, want to do this again? Yeah, I get what you mean. But yeah, I wouldn't mind, Wyatt said with a smile. Friends. Yeah, friends. Gwen smiled, happy to have made a new friend that shared her interest in knowledge and books. Just then, a black Ford Explorer pulled up in front of the library. A man in a blue suit with gray hair stepped out and turned to Gwen before looking at Wyatt. His eyes widened momentarily, but he quickly composed himself. Oh, crap. I forgot Gwen's father is a police captain. Maybe he doesn't know about me? Wyatt thought with a shaky smile. Gwen, how did your studying go? Captain George Stacy asked as he approached his daughter and Wyatt. His tall and professional posture made Wyatt shift back slightly. It went great. Dad, this is Wyatt. A new friend of mine. He helped me with some of the harder subjects, Gwen said. Is that so? Hello there, Wyatt. I'm Captain George Stacy. It's nice to meet you, George said, extending his hand. Wyatt quickly shook it. Wyatt Wilkins. It's nice to meet you, Captain Stacy, Wyatt replied. Thank you for helping my daughter. It's always hard for her to find someone to talk to about her academics, George added with a teasing smile at his daughter. That's not true. There's Peter and, C. George chuckled. We better head home, Gwen. Your mother made tilapia Florentine. Would you care to join us, Wyatt? I actually have to go meet someone soon, so I can't. Thank you for the offer, Captain Stacy, Wyatt said carefully. George nodded, unbothered by Wyatt's refusal. Gwen, on the other hand, looked slightly disappointed. After saying their goodbyes, Gwen and her father left. As they drove off, Gwen suddenly gasped and hugged her backpack in frustration. No. I forgot to ask him for his number. George chuckled at his daughter's antics. So that's Wyatt Wilkins. He seems like a good kid. Still, I'll keep an eye on him for now, especially if he and Gwen are going to be spending more time together. George thought. Back with Wyatt, he let out a loud sigh of relief and began walking away from the library. As he turned the corner onto a darker, more isolated street, he looked down the road and froze at the sight before him. Ben Parker stood in front of an old yellow honey beige 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88, hands at his sides. In front of him stood an anxious man holding a pistol. Just give me the car, old man, the man yelled, raising his gun. Now. Peter and Ben Parker slowed to a stop in front of the New York Public Library. Once the car was parked, Peter gathered his things and turned to his uncle. Thanks for the ride, Uncle Ben, he said. Now, wait a minute, Peter. We need to talk, Ben replied in a calm but steady tone. We can talk later, Peter said, gripping his backpack tightly. Inside the backpack was his new red and blue costume. Well, we can talk now, if you let me, Ben insisted as he turned off the car's radio. What do we have to talk about? Why now? Peter asked. Because we haven't talked in so long. You're Aunt May, and I don't even know who you are anymore. You're neglecting your chores, you have all those strange experiments in your room, and you're starting fights at school. I didn't start that fight. I told you that. Peter replied defensively. Well, you sure as hell finished it, Ben countered. What was I supposed to do, run away? No, you're not supposed to run away. But, look, Pete, I know you're changing. I went through exactly the same thing at your age, Ben said, trying to connect with his nephew. No, not exactly, Peter replied, shaking his head. Peter, these are the years when a boy transforms into the man he's going to become for the rest of his life. Just be careful who you change into. This guy, Paul Reborn, probably deserved what happened. But just because you can beat him up doesn't give you the right to do it. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility, Ben advised sagely. Are you afraid I'm going to turn into some kind of criminal? Quit worrying about me, okay? Something's different, and I'll figure it out. Stop lecturing me, please, Peter said. I don't mean to lecture, and I don't mean to preach. I know I'm not your father. Then stop pretending to be. Peter exclaimed in exasperation. As soon as the words left his mouth, a deep sense of regret washed over him, but he stubbornly held his ground. Right. I'll pick you up here at 10, Ben said quietly. Though he understood that Peter didn't truly mean it, the words still hurt. Not wanting to linger in the tense atmosphere any longer, Peter stepped out of the car. As he watched his uncle drive away, he looked down at his bag and started walking toward the venue for his wrestling match that night. Just give me the car, old man. Dennis Carradine yelled and raised his gun. Now. Listen, son. You don't have to do this, Ben Parker said calmly. Not an ounce of fear could be seen on his face. If you do, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Shut the hell up, old man. Just give me the car. Dennis hissed, his finger sliding over his gun's trigger. That's all I want. Why don't you just put down the gun and go home? Ben asked slowly as he raised his hand to try and calm the frantic man. Dennis, who had never actually killed anyone, began to have second thoughts after seeing Ben's emphatic expression. What the hell are you doing? Get the car. We have to go. Coming from down the dark street, a man carrying a large bag with dollar bills sticking out from its pockets yelled, his pistol in hand. At the man's yell, Dennis's anxiety spiked, and he unconsciously pulled the trigger. Ben closed his eyes out of reflex, but when he didn't feel any pain, he opened his eyes. Only to see a glowing sphere around Dennis's pistol. The bullet he had fired now sat spinning at the bottom of the sphere. In a flash of reddish-pink light, two streams of solid light slammed into Dennis and his partner. They flew through the air and crashed against the side of a brick wall. The men groaned in pain as they held their injured bodies. The guns they had dropped were now locked away in a steel box. Ben blinked in confusion and turned up to see Atomic land in front of him. Are you okay, sir? Ah, yes. I'm fine. Thank you. You're that superhero my nephew likes to watch on TV. Atoman, right? Ben said. Pretty close. Atomic said. He walked over to the injured men and restrained them by placing handcuffs on their wrists and ankles. After he stood, Atomic peered down at Dennis, the man who would have killed Ben Parker in this universe. Did I do the right thing? Saving Ben Parker? Atomic thought turned to a perfectly fine Ben. Around them, a small crowd of people began to gather thanks to the sound of the gunfire and at the sight of Atomic's presence. No, I can't think like that. If I start to let people die on my watch just because that was their supposed destiny, then I can't call myself a hero. Damn Peter's canon event. Hold on. Is the Spider Society gonna come and try to kick my ass now? Atomic thought and quickly looked around for any hexagonal portals. Seeing nothing, he relaxed and turned to Ben. I'm glad I got here on time. Take good care of that nephew of yours, Mr. Parker, Atomic said after a moment of hesitation, and began to levitate in the air. He's going to need you in the future. Ben blinked in utter confusion, hearing his name and advice from the hero in the air. As Atomic was about to fly off, he paused and turned to Ben. Thanks again for that advice you gave me back then. It helps to think about the good times I had with them. Now more than ever, Atomic said cryptically before flying away with Dennis and his partner in tow, leaving all those below confused and turning to Ben for an explanation. Ben had never been as confused as he was then. He then began to think, and it suddenly clicked. A small smile grew on his face as he watched Atomic's trail of light fade out in the night sky. I see now. You're him, aren't you? Ben thought. Peter Parker, or as he now called himself while out as his alter ego, Spider-Man, swung from building to building using his high-tensile webbing across the skies of New York. True to his name, Spider-Man wore a red and blue costume with black web markings throughout the red parts of his suit. On his chest and back were spider logos, and large white lenses served as his mask's eyes. Typically, he would enjoy the thrill of swinging through the city. The sensation of traveling at high speeds and the pull of gravity as he dropped to the ground was unmatched. This was especially true now that he had conquered his fear of heights just a few days earlier. However, that euphoric feeling was absent tonight. Instead, he was preoccupied with thoughts of what had happened to his uncle. More specifically, he was worried about what could have happened to the man who had raised him in place of his father. "I don't mean to lecture, and I don't mean to preach. I know I'm not your father." "Then stop pretending to be." Peter had snapped back at his uncle. Spider-Man shook his head and landed on the side of the Empire State Building. The reason he was out so late was that he couldn't sit still after the events of the night. He had waited for his uncle and aunt to fall asleep before sneaking out. Exactly like a spider, he began to scale the building with his hands and feet. Once on the roof, he leaned over the edge and let out a shaky sigh. "I'm such an idiot," Spider-Man muttered to himself. Ever since he had gone on that field trip to Dr. Connor's laboratory at Empire State University and acquired his spectacular powers, Peter had felt on top of the world. He was now faster and stronger, and his senses were heightened. He was a completely different person from who he had been before. He had superpowers. With this in mind, Peter no longer wanted to be the same pathetic nerd he had always been. To change that, he decided to take the first step toward becoming one of the cool kids by buying a shiny new car. However, for that, he needed money. Money he could easily make by winning a wrestling competition he had seen advertised in the newspaper. Winning the match was easy for him due to his abilities. But when the event organizer refused to pay him the full amount he had won on a technicality, Peter was furious. That was why he didn't intervene when the organizer was robbed moments after he left the room. Peter never imagined that the same thief would be one of the men who almost took his uncle's life for his car. His uncle had almost died. And it would have been entirely his fault. It was only thanks to Atomic's timely interference that his Uncle Ben was still alive, a fact for which Peter would forever be grateful. "With great power comes great responsibility," Spider-Man said, now fully understanding his uncle's words. If he had done the right thing from the start, none of the events from that night would have happened, and his uncle's life would never have been in danger. Those are wise words. Words to live by. Spider-Man jumped to his feet at the voice in front of him. Usually, that wouldn't have been odd, but considering he was 1,400 feet in the sky, it was certainly unexpected. The spider-themed hero blinked as he saw Atomic hovering in front of him. "No way. It's him," Spider-Man thought, recognizing one of New York's heroes, the man who had saved his uncle. "It's you," Spider-Man said, his mind too scattered to come up with a proper response. "Atomic." "At your service," Atomic said as he landed on the edge of the building beside Spider-Man. "You have some impressive moves. I watched you swing through the city and climb this building as if it were nothing. Are you new to the scene, mister?" "P.E. Spider-Man. I'm Spider-Man," he said, cursing inwardly. "It's nice to meet you, Spider-Man. So, what's your deal? Just got your powers and decided to go out for a stroll." "Something like that." Atomic hummed and sat down on the ledge, with Spider-Man joining him. They remained silent, looking out at the grand city before them. Spider-Man wanted to thank Atomic for what he had done, but he worried he might confuse him for saying something so random. Still, he had to say it. "Listen, Spider-Man," Atomic said abruptly, "I've been flying all over the city, helping those I can. But sometimes, I don't always make it in time. There are moments when I have to rush people to the hospital. Luckily, no one has died on my watch. At least, not yet." Atomic thought back to the man who had been crushed to death during a battle in Harlem. If he had acted sooner and not hesitated, would that man still be alive? "Stop it. Worrying about what-ifs will only lead me to a downward spiral." Atomic thought. "What I'm trying to say is that if you're thinking about becoming a hero, or whatever else, I'd have peace of mind knowing that you're out there to help when I can't," Atomic said, placing a hand on Spider-Man's shoulder. "But just because you have powers, it doesn't mean you have to be a hero. If you choose a peaceful path, that's okay too. Although I haven't been doing this for too long, from what I've learned, it's a challenging job. Sacrifices will be made. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Atomic wasn't trying to scare Spider-Man away from becoming a hero. Spider-Man had been one of his favorite heroes in his other life, but seeing the young, costumed teenager in person made Atomic want to give Peter Parker an out. If his biological scan was anything to be believed, which 10 times out of 10, it was, this Peter was still only 15 years old. He knew that if Peter chose this life, it would bring harsh and dangerous challenges. As it did with any variation of the webhead. Though Wyatt still appeared youthful, his other life gave him experiences that had given him a deeper depth of life experience that far surpassed Peter's own. He had lived a life of peace and fun until he was in his early 20s, and his mind was better prepared and ready to tackle the formidable challenges that came with heroism. Still, he wasn't perfect. He had his own issues he had to work on, but he was aware of them. That's... Spider-Man muttered. You don't have to decide what you want to do right now. Just think about it before you swing into action, Atomic said. In the distance, sirens could be heard, drawing their attention. Atomic patted Spider-Man on the shoulder and stood up. Duty calls, Spider-Man. Stepping off the ledge, Atomic entered a free fall before shooting off at incredible speeds into the city, leaving Spider-Man behind. The arachnid hero watched Atomic disappear and then looked down at his hands. He had some serious thinking to do. Wyatt grunted and pushed himself to complete another sit-up. His shirtless body was drenched in sweat, and his abs screamed in pain, but he pushed on nonetheless. After completing his set of sit-ups, he moved on to do push-ups, squats, and pull-ups. When he was done, he rested on his knees and gasped to catch his breath. With shaky hands, he grabbed a towel and wiped himself off. Once he drank some water and recovered enough energy, Wyatt moved to the weight training area in his personal workout room and grabbed 2 35-pound dumbbells. For the next 2 hours, he moved through a series of weight training exercises until his body screamed at him to stop. Why couldn't these powers come with a boost to my physique? Wyatt whined as he walked through his home to head to his living room. After grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge, he turned to the large-screen television. He glanced around his couch briefly, finally spotting the remote control. With a click, the TV powered on. He scrolled through the endless channels until he found a news station. Breaking news. Reports have emerged that Tony Stark was attacked in broad daylight at the Circuit de Monaco in Europe by an assailant wielding energy whips. Fortunately, Tony Stark, clad in his Iron Man armor, was able to defeat the mysterious attacker after a quick battle, a male newscaster announced. Wyatt sat down on his couch and watched the footage of the fight. It was tough and shaky, most likely recorded on a phone. The battle unfolded exactly as it did in Iron Man 2, starting with Tony suiting up in his Mk5 suit and facing off against Ivan Vanko, who was armed with long-range, high-tech whips. Once the fight was over, the image switched back to the newscaster. In follow-up to the events in Monaco, we have an exclusive interview with U.S. Senator Stern. The newscaster continued, and the image changed to Senator Stern in his private office. It's just unbelievable. It proves that the genie is out of the bottle, and this man has no idea what he's doing. He thinks of the Iron Man weapon as a toy. I was at a hearing where Mr. Stark was adamant that these suits could not exist anywhere else, don't exist anywhere else, and never will exist anywhere else, at least for 5 to 10 years. And here we are in Monaco, realizing that these suits exist now, Senator Stern said. Wyatt rolled his eyes at the slimy secret Hydra member and turned off the television. Getting up from his couch, he walked over to stare out of the large window in his Manhattan corner apartment. It was a luxury space he had purchased with his ever-growing funds, thanks to his bi-weekly visits to Victor's pawn shop. Victor's pawn shop had expanded its operation significantly, thanks to the business Wyatt had brought in, making Victor a very wealthy man. Wyatt was his best customer, after all. Because of this, Victor had no problem setting Wyatt up with a secure bank account and a credit card, as well as connecting him with a realtor who didn't ask questions as to how a 16-year-old could buy a luxury apartment. For Victor, Wyatt was a walking gold mine, helping to build his growing fortune. It was in Victor's best interest to keep Wyatt happy. While Wyatt enjoyed his luxury apartment, it wasn't his only place to stay. He had established several underground hideouts throughout New York for emergencies. Still, his apartment featured a fantastic view and extravagant amenities. Oh, and it was above ground, too. Wyatt didn't have any ambitions of becoming a hermit. While he could create his own building or apartment with time, buying one brought a lot fewer questions than erecting a building from thin air. Despite the changes in this universe, everything else is still following the MCU canon. Wyatt thought as he leaned on the glass. Looking over to the now-in-construction Stark Tower, Wyatt looked up at the sky above it and remained silent. An image of a blue blast of energy shooting into the sky and the emergence of a massive portal filled Wyatt's mind. From there, hundreds of Chitauri soldiers spilled down into the city, unleashing terror and destruction like never before seen. Shouldn't be much longer. With that said, he returned to his personal gym. He had to grow stronger. Hey, if that one isn't to your liking. How about this one right here? You can't go wrong with the MP5. It fires 9mm, and the military and police love it. So, what do you think? A bald-headed man with crooked teeth smiled as he held said gun in his hands. His name was Tyrese, and he was a well-known arms dealer in New York. In his shuttle van, an extensive array of guns and weaponry lay stacked, ready for purchase. Standing before him were 4 men. They were part of the Russian mob, and they were in the market for new weaponry for an upcoming job. They've dealt with Tyrese before, and they could attest to the quality of weaponry after dealing with him for the past 3 years. Yes, very good. We'll take 7. Do you have any more Kalashnikovs? One of the Russians asked as he inspected an M4A1. Not with me. But I do have a new shipment coming in a few days. For the meanwhile, how about I show you gentlemen some of my newest products? Tyrese grinned and grabbed an ACR. But before he could give his sales pitch, a flash of light flickered over them. Everyone in the empty parking lot turned up to see a red and white figure with a billowing white cape looking down at them from behind a helmet. I suggest you all give up, Atomic said. This won't end well for you all. Shoot him. One of the Russians yelled and pulled out his handgun. Immediately, everyone was quick to follow and brought out their weapons. Atomic sighed and waved his left hand. In a flash of light, the weapons in the Russians' hands turned into toy guns, clicking uselessly in their hands. What the hell? Tyrese gawked at the flying figure as another flash of light flickered over the Russians. One by one, they all fell to the ground as their clothing morphed into weighted stray jackets, leaving them to flop around uselessly. Hearing their angry yells, Atomic created gags for all the men. With that done, his gaze landed on Tyrese, one of the reasons for New York's spike in gun-related crimes. Atomic had been searching for those responsible for the recent surge of firearms in the city. After nights spent apprehending criminals intoxicated by the false power of their weapons, he finally encountered someone who surrendered at the sight of him, revealing the name of one of the weapons dealer's merchants and his area of operation. Even though Atomic knew Tyrese was nothing but a small component of the entire operation, he was still a crucial part in tracking down the main supplier responsible for distributing firearms across the city. The longer these people were allowed to sell their weapons to the criminal element, a growing number of innocent lives were at risk of being caught in violent shootouts fueled by those weapons. No way. You're that guy that's on the news. Atomic. Tyrese said and raised his hands. Listen, man, I don't want any problems. I'm just trying to make a living. Atomic didn't respond and landed on the ground. He walked over to Tyrese's van and examined the man's weapons and ammunition. There was a wide array of options ranging from pistols, assault rifles, submachine guns, shotguns, and even a sniper. With a low hum, he placed a hand on the van and scanned all of Tyrese's weapons to store their blueprints in his mind. With a thought, the van and its contents transformed into an ice sculpture, much to Tyrese's shock. No. My product. Tyrese cried and fell to his knees, clutching at the cold ice. Why did you do that? Did you think I was going to let you go? Atomic asked and kneeled next to Tyrese. Before I throw you to the police, I'll give you a chance. Tell me who and where your supplier is. Come on, man. I can't do that. He'll kill me. He won't. I'll stop him. No, you can't. No one can stop the big man. The night was shrouded in silence over a heavily fortified warehouse on Staten Island. Dozens of highly trained men in tailored suits, their sharp silhouettes contrasting against the darkness, patrolled the perimeter with practiced vigilance. Their eyes, sharp and aware, betrayed a sense of unease beneath the surface, for they were well aware of the precious cargo housed within the warehouse they guarded, which belonged to a top-tier arms dealer infamous for its ruthless dealings among the criminal element. Yet, despite their training, moments of distraction crept in on the men, lured by the monotony of their watch. Guard duty often turned into an exercise in patience, particularly when it became clear that few would dare challenge their operation. With no real threats on the horizon, the guards couldn't help but let their minds wander or enter random chats to lessen their boredom. "Hey, did you watch last night's game?" One of the guards, Alan, asked. "Nah, I had to sub in for Quinton." "Who won?" Sebastian replied. "The Knicks won. 131 to 128. It was a great game." "Great. This is the last time I sub for any dash." Alan was interrupted as a glowing strand of energy abruptly pulled him back. Sebastian raised his gun, but before he could alert the rest of the warehouse, a glowing boxing glove crashed into his skull, knocking him out. Atomic, in a black and gray tactical version of his suit, glided down onto the rooftop of the warehouse. Raising his hands, Sebastian and Alan were gagged and restrained with rope. Before he left the area, Atomic made sure to transmute their rifles into useless toy models, as he had with every other guard he had taken out. "My first stealth mission. This is easier than I thought," Atomic thought as he looked around the area from the roof of the building. Behind him were the last 2 of 7 guards who were in charge of keeping watch on the roof, leaving 11 guards on the ground. Regardless of his inexperience with stealth, Atomic had played enough games and watched several movies to have a good grasp on how to move. It did help that he replaced the materials of the soles of his boots with acoustic foam, keeping his steps extra silent. Alongside his ability to perceive molecules and atoms, he was able to see people moving in and out without having to expose himself. One by one, Atomic knocked out guard after guard using various methods, whether that be hitting the guards in the head, injecting them with an anesthetic, or restraining them completely. "I need to learn how to fight. I can't keep relying on my powers for everything," Atomic thought as he knocked out the last guard on watch. Bryce, answer me, damn it. Why isn't anyone responding?" A low, angry voice said from a radio. Atomic looked down at the walkie-talkie on Bryce's belt and pulled it off. After a quick search, he found their radio frequency and adjusted his helmet to join their radio communication. From within the warehouse, a tall man dressed in a black suit turned to a massive man standing in the corner of the room. "Something's going on out there. Barney, take a team and check things out." "No problem, boss," Barney nodded and left the room, leaving behind Luther Wilcox, the individual handpicked by the big man to handle the gun trafficking operation responsible for selling weapons across New York. An operation that raked in millions of dollars each month, thanks to the never-ending need for firearms from the criminal element. Barney, alongside 10 other well-armed men, began marching toward the warehouse's large set of back doors. As they walked, they passed hundreds of crates full of various firearms, ammunition, and explosives. There were enough guns and ammunition to arm 2 entire armies within the warehouse. As they approached the imposing doors of the warehouse, a sudden surge of reddish-pink energy erupted against the building with an explosive force, causing the heavy doors to fly open and crash inward. The impact sent several of the guards stumbling to the ground, their shouts of surprise swallowed by the chaos. Barney, on the brink of being swept away by the wave of energy, barely managed to maintain his footing thanks to his supernatural reflexes, emerging from the encounter unscathed. Through the thick, swirling smoke generated by his attack, Atomic strode confidently into the warehouse. His black and gray costume began to shimmer as it transformed, the colors morphing into a striking combination of vibrant red and white. Barney frowned at the sight of Atomic. "You're that guy on the news. Adam or some shit." Atomic remained silent, eyeing everyone before him. He then looked around at the large number of weapon crates in the warehouse. "I'll give you all one chance. Surrender, and no one has to get hurt," he said. "Hilarious. Shoot him." Barney yelled and pointed at Atomic. After a few moments of silence and confused grunts, he growled and turned to his remaining men. "What are you fools doing?" "Shoot him." "We can't. Our guns aren't working," one of the men said as he tapped away uselessly at his rifle's trigger. "They're all empty. Water guns need water to work, after all," Atomic said as he floated in the air. "I made the switch to your weapons during my opening attack. It's easy not to notice the change when you're dodging large doors flying at high speeds." What trickery is this? Barney growled. No tricks. Just changing matter itself, Atomic said and extended his arms. Behind him, 7 glowing spheres came to life and zoomed towards the men. Go, my funnels. Atomic thought, imagining this attack to imitate the iconic fin funnels from one of his favorite mecha anime in his past life. The spheres moved incredibly fast and erratically, leaving little room to react or dodge. Those who did manage to dodge were unprepared for the sphere to twist in midair and return to knock them down. Hard. Much to Atomic's surprise, Barney, despite his large size, was weaving in and out of his funnel's attack paths. Inhaling deeply, Barney's brown eyes turned electric green. He raised his arms and opened his hands. In a swirl of glowing green energy, balls of pure power burst to life. With careful aim, Barney released several energy blasts at Atomic's funnels, destroying them. Holy shit! Is he shooting ki blasts? Atomic thought, wide-eyed. As the last of Atomic's funnels disintegrated in a shower of sparks and debris, Barney pivoted sharply, his eyes narrowing with determination. With a swift motion, he unleashed a powerful, concentrated blast aimed directly at Atomic. The hero, momentarily stunned by the destruction around him, quickly regained his composure. Drawing on his training, he conjured a makeshift barrier just in time. The immense force of Barney's blast collided with the barrier, which buckled under the pressure due to its hasty construction. With a thunderous crash, the barrier shattered, sending Atomic hurtling backward through the air, his body tumbling uncontrollably as he struggled to regain his footing. A mutant? Atomic asked aloud. Yeah. A very well-paid one at that. Barney grinned and chased after Atomic. As he moved, his hand shot blasts of highly powerful, highly explosive energy at the hero. Stop moving. I'll make this quick. Sorry, I'll have to pass. I'm allergic to energy blasts, Atomic said as he avoided the blasts of energy by flying through the air. With a swing of his arm, Atomic created 2 massive stone fists to erupt from the ground. Barney's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly sent a volley of blasts at the fists. As Barney attacked his stone constructs, Atomic's eyes focused on Barney's glowing energy blasts. Time seemed to slow down as he took in the energy blast's molecular structure. His blasts aren't ki. They're pure plasma. Atomic thought. Plasma, often referred to as the 4th state of matter, is a gas that has become ionized, meaning it contains free electrons and positively charged ions. This ionization occurs when a gas is subjected to high energy, such as extreme heat or strong electromagnetic fields, causing electrons to be stripped from atoms. Barney's mutation must allow him to rapidly heat the space over his hands while also hyperboosting the electromagnetic field around his body. That's what allows him to blast the energy wherever he wants. Wyatt thought with a massive grin. With a growl of frustration, Barney leaped after Atomic, charging up a massive blast in both hands. With a roar, he unleashed the blast at Atomic. Atomic flew back, narrowly avoiding the blast, but his focus remained solely on the destructive energy flowing just inches from his body. His eyes darted back and forth as he quickly analyzed the plasma's atomic and molecular structure. After a few seconds, he grinned. Okay, I think I get it now. Let's see if I can do that, too. Atomic thought. Spreading his arms wide, Atomic transformed the crates of weapons in the warehouse into large metal pythons. The pythons emitted a metallic hiss as they lunged at Barney. The large man narrowed his eyes at the approaching pythons and pushed himself to new heights. Blasts of plasma tore through the pythons, causing chaos throughout the warehouse. When he realized he had inadvertently destroyed millions of dollars worth of product, Barney froze and stared at the destruction he had caused. I've always wanted to do this, Atomic muttered and held his hands at his side. His hands were cupped over each other as his body was angled away from Barney. Slowly, a brilliant ball of red plasma began to form in the space between his hands. Kamehameha. Pushing his hands out, Atomic released his own blast of energy at Barney, shocking the Mun at seeing his own abilities used against him. You bastard. That's my power. Barney yelled, his face contorted in rage. Without wasting another second, he pushed both hands in front of him and released the most enormous blast of energy he had ever created. Atomic's red beam clashed against Barney's green. They were locked in a beam struggle, filling the warehouse in a blinding light. Slowly, Barney's own more refined plasma beam began to push back Atomic's. Shit. I may know how to create them, but they're nowhere near his level yet. Atomic thought as he struggled to push himself to reinforce his attack. He could feel his internal energy draining quickly as he continued firing his attack. No. I don't have to overpower him. I have to outsmart him. Atomic shifted his right leg, channeling a surge of energy that coursed along the ground like a ripple in water. The vibrations reached beneath Barney's feet, transforming the solid floor into loose, shifting sand. Caught off guard, Barney stumbled, his concentration faltering as the ground gave way beneath him. Seizing the opportunity, Atomic surged forward. With a fierce shout of fury, he empowered his beam using a surge of his internal energy. The powerful push slammed through Barney's own energy blast. The sound of their energies clashing was deafening, but it was nothing compared to the anguished scream that escaped Barney's lips as Atomic's force overcame him. The mutant was violently hurled backward, his body crashing through a pile of crates filled with weapons, splintering wood and metal flying in all directions. Panting heavily, Atomic cautiously approached the wreckage, anxiety gnawing at him. He bent down, peering through the debris to check on Barney's condition. A wave of relief washed over him as he saw the faint rise and fall of Barney's chest. He had been worried that he hadn't adjusted the power output of his blast in time. Just as he breathed a sigh of respite, a deafening bang shattered through the battered warehouse. The sudden force of a shot struck Atomic squarely in the back, sending him reeling forward. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he turned to meet the furious glare of Luther, who stood poised with his shotgun, eyes ablaze with unrestrained hatred. After cocking his weapon, Luther prepared to unleash another round. "You capped bastard. Look at what you did. Do you know who these weapons belong to?" Luther yelled as another round struck Atomic in the chest, pushing him back slightly. "You'll pay for this. I'll feed your corpse to my dogs." Another bang echoed in the warehouse, knocking Atomic down to one knee. "Damn it. Using a continuous plasma beam like that drained me more than I thought." Atomic thought as another blast of pellets hit him. The only reason he was still alive was because of the materials his suit was made of. Without his suit, he would have been killed after the second shotgun blast. Even so, no matter how tough his suit was, Atomic still felt every shot. Standing over Atomic, Luther racked his shotgun and aimed the muzzle at the hero's head. In an act of defiance and anger, Atomic forced every muscle in his exhausted body to move. With a determined yell, he shot to his feet and tackled Luther to the ground. Sitting over the Mun, Atomic did the only thing he could. He began to rain down punches on the arms dealer's face with his glove's adamantium knuckles. Each new punch, although unrefined and clumsy, caused Luther's face to twist and morph. It wasn't until Atomic saw that the Mun had gone unconscious that he stopped. Gasping deeply and erratically, Atomic looked down at the bleeding and bruised Mun and his own bloodied fists. With slow, heavy movements, he got to his feet and surveyed the utter destruction around him. "Won't be long before the cops show up," he said, examining the remaining crates of weapons. While he wanted to believe that the police and politicians in the city would confiscate and dispose of these weapons properly, he knew there would ultimately be those within the system who were corrupt and would sell the firearms back to the underworld. Leaving them for the police was not an option. Moving quickly, or as fast as he could manage in his state, Atomic began to transmute every last weapon crate into ice sculptures. This task took several minutes, as he had to actively touch each crate, having lost the energy to use his powers at long range. By the time he finished, the police were outside the warehouse, ready to barge in. Using the shadows as cover, Atomic stealthily left the warehouse and flew away, leaving behind dozens of unconscious criminals and ice sculptures for the police to handle. James Wesley strolled through the opulent halls of the sprawling mansion in the sky penthouse, his footsteps echoing softly against the marble floors. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and expensive fabrics, and the lavish decor, ornate chandeliers, rich tapestries, and plush furniture, surrounded him like a silent testament to wealth and sophistication. He held a sleek tablet in one hand, its glowing screen reflecting the glint of gold accents that adorned the room. Despite the grandeur around him, his expression remained impassive, a mask of concentration suggesting he was lost in thought, focused on the files before him rather than the luxury enveloping him. James was the right-hand Mun and confidant of the Big Mun, a notorious figure overseeing the daily operations of his criminal empire in New York. Tasked with managing all interests within the empire and eliminating anyone posing a threat, he took great pleasure in his work. Reaching a set of large oak doors, James announced his presence and waited. "Come in," a deep voice called out from the other side. Once inside the well-lit office, James walked over to stand beside a huge man dressed in a luxurious white three-piece suit. This was the man whose name should not be spoken, yet who was well known throughout the city's criminal underworld, the big man. "It's all gone, sir. All our men have been taken into custody, and every piece of weaponry and ammunition has either been destroyed or transformed into ice," James reported professionally as he swiped through his tablet. The screen displayed images of the NYPD apprehending guards from the weapons warehouse alongside striking, detailed photographs of ice sculptures of firearms. "This is a setback. How long before we can resume operations?" the big man inquired. "I'm afraid it will take some time," James replied. The big man frowned as he examined the images of the ice sculptures. "Do we know who is responsible for this?" "Yes, sir. The individual calling himself Atomic has been making quite a name for himself in the city. His skill set is formidable." New York's newest hero," the big man muttered, his sharp mind swiftly considering several potential solutions. His skills could be better utilized elsewhere. "Wesley, reach out to Atomic. Arrange a meeting, no matter what it takes." "Yes, sir," James nodded and left the room, ready to plan how to accomplish his new task. Minutes later, a woman dressed in an elegant gown and adorned with a $50,000 pearl necklace entered the room, carrying a bottle of red wine. "Wilson? Care to join me for a glass of Domaine Leroy Corton Renard's Grand Cru 2001? The woman asked affectionately. "Of course, Vanessa. I wouldn't dream of refusing," Wilson Fisk replied with a warm smile as he joined Vanessa Mariana for a glass of wine. Paintbrush in hand, Wyatt swiped side to side as he painted one of the recently restored walls within Luigi's restaurant. Once his brush ran dry of paint, he went to dip it in the paint pan beside him but winced when a shock of pain ran down his back. "Wyatt, are you okay?" Luigi asked as he turned away from the chairs he was repairing. "You've been wincing all morning. Are you injured?" "Yeah. I kinda threw my shoulder out when I was, playing catch with some friends," Wyatt said. "You have friends?" Color me surprised, Serena grinned as she sprayed some more Windex on the restaurant's new glass windows. "Here, I thought I was your only friend." "Hey, I have friends." Wyatt gave Serena an annoyed look, causing her to stick her tongue out at him. "Serena, stop teasing the boy," Luigi said with a smile. He placed his tools down and wiped his hands with a nearby towel. "Okay, I think we've done enough for the day. You two go on. I'll clean things up." "It's all right, we'll help. No. Young kids like you should be out having fun. Now go. I will clean up." Luigi all but pushed both Serena and Wyatt outside the restaurant. He even went as far as to lock the restaurant's front door and give them a wave. It had been a week since the chaos erupted at the restaurant, and now the rebuilding process was well underway. Thanks to Luigi's meticulous insurance policy and the unmistakable evidence of vandalism, his claim was approved without delay. With the funds in hand, he eagerly hired a few close friends, talented contractors and skilled repairmen, who worked diligently to restore his beloved pizzeria to its former glory. The air was filled with the sounds of hammers, drills, and the cheerful banter of workers as they tackled the larger tasks, leaving only the finer details to be addressed before Luigi's Pizzeria would be ready to welcome back its loyal customers. Meanwhile, Wyatt mused over the situation. He could have easily tackled the repairs himself, expertly fixing and even upgrading the restaurant with his own two hands. However, the thought of revealing his vigilante identity made him hesitate. How could he explain the miracle of Luigi's Pizzeria being restored overnight without arousing suspicion? Instead, he opted for a more discreet approach, offering his assistance to Luigi's friends as an extra pair of hands. Whether it was carrying tools, sweeping up the end-of-day mess, or simply providing moral support, Wyatt was determined to contribute without drawing attention to himself. When it came to Atomic, he made sure to fly over their home every other hour each night. He also utilized his power to enhance and improve various aspects of the restaurant in subtle ways. "Well, that's that," Wyatt said as he stretched his limbs. As he did so, he held in his moans of pain from the bruises from being shot at by a shotgun. While his suit had adamantium plating to protect him, they weren't made to properly absorb the sheer force of the shotgun blows. "Wanna grab a burger?" "My treat." "No, my treat," Serena said as they walked through the streets of Harlem. "If you think I'm going to keep letting you buy me stuff, you're dead wrong. Do that for your girlfriend.
Fine.
No Christmas presents for you then. Hey, I didn't mean it like that. Once they arrived at one of their favorite burger joints, a small eatery run by some of Luigi's good friends, they sat down and waited for their order. While we're on the topic, is there a girlfriend or girlfriends in my little Wyatt's life? Serena teased as she played with the ice in her drink with her straw.
A little?
I'm, like, half a foot taller than you, Wyatt said and took a sip of his water.
And no, there's no one. Maybe a boyfriend, perhaps?
I don't judge. Serena said. I always wanted a gay best friend.
Funny.
I'll have you know I'm as straight as an arrow, Wyatt said as he leaned on his fist.
Ho? Then are you a titsman or an assman? Go on, you can tell me.
Serena leaned in and grinned. Like I'd tell you that. I know a trap when I see one. Wyatt pushed Serena back with a finger, causing her to pout.
Ah, come on. You can tell me.
I may have a friend I can set you up with.
No thanks.
Besides, I'm too busy to have a girlfriend. Wyatt said as their food was finally brought to them. At the sight of their burgers and the aroma of the expertly cooked and seasoned fries, Wyatt and Serena's stomachs growled in hunger. Without further ado, they both dug in and ate with gusto. As they were, Wyatt eyed Serena from the corner of his eye. No matter how much she forced herself to act like nothing was wrong, he could see that she was scared. When in the restaurant or their home, Serena would always look out the windows and jump at the slightest movement in the shadows. Even on their way to the burger joint, she stuck close to Wyatt. Her eyes shifted around through the crowds for a boogeyman who would come and take her. Wyatt knew that as long as the threat of the men who attacked her father existed, she wouldn't be able to live comfortably. Luigi had even confided in him that Serena was having nightmares every other night. The older man had looked so defeated and ashamed when he had told him. This is all my fault, Luigi had said. Despite himself, Wyatt couldn't help but agree. With the month's timeline hanging over their heads, Serena and Luigi were both growing even more anxious. Talks of them leaving were shared, but Luigi refused to leave the restaurant his father had passed down to him. He would find a way to pay back the loan he had taken, even if it meant that he had to beg his friends for help. Everything will be all right, Serena, Wyatt said, reaching out to grab her hand. It trembled lightly in his grasp. She looked up at him slowly, her faux cheerful expression melted into one of fear. I'm scared, Wyatt. I know. But I promise you, no one will take you anywhere or hurt your dad. Wyatt spoke confidently and sincerely. How can you promise that? These people, they're dangerous. They're the dash Serena stuttered, tears streaming down her face as all her pent-up emotions and sleepless nights exploded to the surface. I don't know what to do. Wyatt stood up and sat next to her. He brought Serena in and held her close to his chest. She tried to wiggle out of his grasp at first, but she quickly gave in and let herself be held. Serena would never admit it, but she enjoyed being held by Wyatt's arms. They were strong, and they let her feel safe. At least for that moment. Sharp knives zipped through the expansive training facility with breathtaking speed. This state-of-the-art space, measuring 30 meters wide and soaring 15 meters high, was carefully crafted by Wyatt and nestled deep beneath the lush expanse of Central Park. His decision to build underground was deliberate, a calculated move to keep his activities concealed from any observers. He had implemented a complex, well-reinforced support structure designed to withstand immense pressure and prevent any risk of collapse from the park's upper layers. Wyatt had meticulously layered the walls with adamantium, while soundproofing materials absorbed every sound, ensuring complete secrecy. Additional barriers of lead protected against unwanted surveillance, and shock absorbers were strategically installed to dampen vibrations, further cloaking the facility's operations in silence. Each corner of the facility was equipped with advanced workout gear that pushed the limits of what could be achieved in physical training. Yet, despite the impressive engineering and his pride in this remarkable creation, Wyatt faced a critical dilemma. He needed to secure a more reliable power source. The industrial generators he had initially installed, while functional, were beginning to falter under the demands of the facility's expansive operations. He knew that without a sustainable and potent energy supply, even this marvel of construction could be rendered ineffective. In the center of the facility stood Wyatt, his body encased in a suit of knight's armor made of adamantium. Steel knives flew around him, manipulated by his mind as he practiced one of his in-progress techniques. Suddenly, two knives darted toward him at blinding speed. Just as they were about to reach him, they halted midair, stopped by an invisible force or barrier surrounding Wyatt's body. Without warning, the remaining knives surged toward him, aiming to skewer him, but they, too, were frozen in place an inch away. Wyatt trembled with exertion as he concentrated on expanding the highly focused mass of space around him. "Okay, I think I've got this part down. On to phase 3, Wyatt said, commanding the knives to back away from him. Taking a deep breath, he began to run, with the knives giving chase. Phase 3 of his training to master his own version of Gojo Satoru's infinity technique involved controlling the concentrated mass while in motion. Although this sounded simple on paper, in practice, it proved to be a Herculean task. It had taken him 3 months just to form the barrier around his body while standing still, and that was without crushing himself into a pulp. He achieved this through his extreme precision in controlling atoms and his quantum computer-level thinking. As he ran, the first two knives struck his developing infinity barrier, freezing just inches away from him. Holy crap, yes. Wyatt cheered, but that momentary distraction broke his intense concentration. The rest of the knives flew at him and struck with incredible force. The loud metallic clangs resonated off his armor. He stood still in disappointment and sighed. Damn me. Wyatt continued to train his technique for another 2 hours. Still, after making little to no progress, he decided to move on to his next developing technique, inspired by another character from Jujutsu Kaisen. Star Rage, Yuki Tsukumo's innate curse technique, allows her to manipulate mass, which she can add to herself or Garuda, her Shikigami, to amplify their power. This virtual mass results in increased force, making her punches and Garuda's strikes devastatingly strong. After countless hours of training to create his own infinity technique, Wyatt was able to use his experience and knowledge to translate his control over the mass around his body to his fists. This was a much easier feat than covering his entire body in mass while on the move. Although Wyatt could use his powers to attack in hundreds of different ways, he knew that someday, an opponent would bypass his constructs and engage him in hand-to-hand combat. With his own Star Rage technique, he would have a way to counterattack with incredible power. After removing his armor and putting on some workout gear, Wyatt waved his hand, causing a replica of the abomination, made of stone, to rise from the ground. In Newtonian physics, the mass of an object remains constant regardless of its speed. Speed affects the force of impact, which is related to the object's momentum and kinetic energy, but not its mass itself. With that in mind, Wyatt realized he had to calculate how much mass to use and apply the appropriate speed to his strike on each strike. Okay, let's use 6,800 kilograms of mass at a velocity of 50 kilometers per hour with an impact duration of 1 second, Wyatt said as he slid into an unrefined boxing stance, his powers working to execute the calculations. Note to self, learn how to fight. Stepping forward, he gritted his teeth and punched the stone statue of his first-ever opponent. The stone statue immediately shattered into hundreds of pieces, smoke exploding around Wyatt. Seeing his technique work as planned, he pumped his fist in victory. Okay, let's find out how hard I can really hit. For the next few hours, Wyatt practiced hitting with various combinations of mass and speed, leaving the training center filled with shattered stone and demolished steel. If a bystander were to witness him, they would have assumed he possessed super strength comparable to the Hulk due to the sheer power he could unleash. By the end of his training, Wyatt's speed in using his new offensive ability had improved to 3 seconds. This was a significant reduction from the 15 seconds it took him on his first attempt. Over time, he became confident that he could shorten this gap to nearly instantaneous. Exhausted from the day's training, Wyatt cleaned up the mess and headed to the facility showers. Although he could clean himself instantly with his powers, he preferred the relaxation of a long, cool shower after training. Once he was clean and dressed, he took one of the facility's elevators and exited through a tree in Central Park. After sealing the entrance, Wyatt looked up at the night sky. I'm feeling like sushi tonight, he thought as he began walking toward one of his favorite sushi restaurants. As he strolled through the busy streets, Wyatt paused at a newspaper stand when he saw the headline, Hammer Industries to reveal new cutting-edge weapons in a demonstration tomorrow at the Stark Expo, a can't-miss event. After buying a newspaper, Wyatt frowned at the picture beneath the headline. It showed Justin Hammer posing dramatically, with what he thought was an intellectual look. It's finally time. Let's go meet Iron Man, Wyatt muttered with a slight grin as he walked off, his hungry stomach growling in protest. As the sun cast its warm glow over the bustling back courtyard of Midtown Manhattan Magna High School, laughter and chatter filled the air during lunchtime. Among the sea of students, 3 friends gathered at a picnic table. They eagerly discussed their upcoming adventure to the much-anticipated Stark Expo, a spectacular year-long celebration of cutting-edge technology set to unfold in the heart of Queens, New York. I can't believe we got tickets to the Stark Expo. I can't wait to see what new inventions they'll be showing off tonight, Peter Parker said to his 2 best friends in the world, Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn. How'd your dad do it, Gwen? I thought VIP tickets for the expo were supposed to be hard to get and super expensive. My dad has a friend in the force who gave him the tickets as a thank you gift. When he gave them to me, I almost didn't believe it, Gwen said as she handed out a ticket to Peter and Harry, leaving behind 2 tickets in the envelope in her hand. This is awesome. Even if I wanted them, my dad would never let me buy the tickets. I guess his little rivalry with Tony Stark runs deeper than I thought. Harry said as he examined his ticket. Hey, Gwen? What are you going to do with that extra ticket? Planning on selling it? Gwen shook her head and placed the envelope in her bag. No, I plan on asking Wyatt to come. Ah, yes. This mystery genius friend of yours, Harry said with an unbelieving look. Hey, he is a genius. I think he can even give Peter a run for his money. Gwen gave Peter a teasing look. Besides, I'm sure you 3 boys will get along well. Hear that, Pete? You won't be the group's head genius any longer. Harry chuckled at Peter's unamused look. I, for one, am looking forward to meeting Gwen's mystery friend. I always wanted a friend who I could bounce ideas and theories off of. Peter said, raising his hands. Before he could continue speaking, a subtle ring echoed in his mind. Frowning, he ignored his spidey sense and let the incoming football hit his head. Ouch. The 3 friends turned to see Flash Thompson and Kenny Kong laughing as they walked over to pick up their ball. Sorry, Parker. My hand slipped. Flash. Gwen yelled with a glare. Peter glared at Flash, his hands clenched into fists below the table. With my powers, it would be so easy to wipe that smirk off your face. But if I did that, I wouldn't be living up to Uncle Ben's expectations. Peter thought as he relaxed. Very funny, Flash. I know. That's why we're laughing. This wasn't part of the plan. Wyatt thought as he walked through the bustling crowds of the Stark Expo's front gate. His eyes scanned through the faces of everyone in the area before he finally found Gwen, who turned to him at the same time, a brilliant smile growing on her face. Wyatt. Wyatt over here. Gwen yelled as she waved an arm in the air. Wyatt smiled slightly and raised his hand. Once he was close enough, he saw Peter and Harry standing near Gwen. Guys, this is Wyatt Wilkins. Wyatt, these 2 are my good friends, Peter Parker and Harry Osborn, Gwen said as she introduced everyone to each other. It's a pleasure. Gwen's talked a lot about you 2 when we're not discussing trigonometry, Wyatt said with a friendly smile as he shook Peter's hand. How weird. He doesn't resemble any of the live-action Peter Parkers. Then again, he's much older than his MCU counterpart, too. I guess I can't go off my meta-knowledge for this world's Spider-Man. Wyatt thought. It's nice to meet you, too, Peter said with a smile. He couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu for some reason. Wyatt's voice sounded vaguely familiar to him. Wyatt then greeted Harry, and Gwen gave him his ticket. He frowned slightly and looked up at the bright sun above. The Hammer Industries demonstration wasn't until later that night. He figured he had some time to burn before then. All right, boys. Let's go see what the future has in store for us. Gwen said as she led the group into the expo. Over the next couple of hours, the 4 wandered through the vibrant aisles of the expo, their eyes wide with wonder as they marveled at the myriad of groundbreaking inventions on display. Peter and Gwen were practically bouncing with excitement at each new piece of technology, their enthusiasm infectious. They eagerly delved into discussions about the mechanics behind each innovation, their voices animated as they shared theories and insights. Wyatt occasionally chimed in, offering his thoughtful perspectives that demonstrated his sharp intellect. As they navigated the bustling sections filled with dazzling exhibits, Wyatt took it upon himself to buy everyone an array of snacks, crispy nachos piled high with cheese, sweet cotton candy that melted in their mouths, and refreshing drinks. Gwen initially hesitated, her independent nature kicking in as she tried to decline. However, Wyatt's warm smile and dismissive wave of her concerns quickly convinced her to indulge. Peter's face lit up at the generous offerings, and even Harry, accustomed to a life of luxury, accepted the food with an appreciative nod. As the boys talked amongst each other, Gwen watched with a small smile. She was happy that both her best friends and new friend were getting along. Eventually, night fell over them, and the highly anticipated Hammer Industries demonstration was coming up. Despite all the fun he had been having interacting with Gwen, Peter, and Harry, Wyatt had a job to do. Thanks to the alarm he had set up earlier to sound like a ringtone, he had acted as if he had just been called into his part-time job. "Are you sure you have to go? Can't they have someone else cover?" Gwen asked. "That's so not fair," Harry said.
Man.
"I heard that this next event isn't one to miss," Peter said just before Gwen gave him her infamous the look. "I mean, I'm sure it won't be that impressive."
"It's all right.
"Besides, my manager made it sound like I was the only person available, so it is what it is," Wyatt replied. "It was nice meeting you too, but duty calls. We should do this again sometime." Peter blinked at Wyatt's words but nodded in agreement, as did Harry. Gwen, feeling a bit disappointed, also nodded. Harry noticed her reaction and frowned slightly. "I'll record the event for you. That way, you can still see it," she offered. "You're the best, Gwen." Wyatt exclaimed with a smile and began jogging out of the expo. "If we leave now, I think we can still get some good seats." "Let's go," Harry said, pulling Gwen and Peter away from waving goodbye to Wyatt. "Come on, you two." Peter and Gwen followed Harry as he made his way through the crowds. As they moved, Gwen turned to Peter and then glanced back in the direction Wyatt had gone. After a moment of thought, she turned back to Peter. "So, what do you think of Wyatt?" she asked as they entered the expo's main pavilion, which was quickly filling up with people. "He seems like a good guy." "I like him," Peter said. "Still, it feels like I've met him somewhere before."
"Really?"
"Well, he spends a lot of his free time at the library. Maybe you've seen or heard him there."
"Maybe." "Hey, you two. Hurry up. I snagged us these great seats over here." Harry called out as he hovered above 3 seats near the center of the pavilion, annoying a few other visitors in the process. "Well, let's not keep him waiting," Gwen said as she and Peter took their seats. A glimmering silver Audi pulled up beside the main entrance of the Grand Pavilion at the Stark Expo. 2 elegant women exited the vehicle, dressed beautifully for the evening's event. These women were Pepper Potts, the CEO of Stark Industries, and Natasha Romanoff, who was currently undercover as Natalie Rushman and serving as Tony Stark's ex-assistant. "I'll keep the car down here, all right?" Happy Hogan, one of Tony Stark's longest and most loyal employees, said from behind the wheel. "Thank you, Happy," Pepper said as she and Natasha made their way into the pavilion to find their seats. Upbeat music blasted through the pavilion speakers as a large logo for Hammer Industries illuminated the massive screen on stage. Justin Hammer, the CEO of Hammer Industries, danced onto the stage, enjoying the rhythm of the music. As the song came to an end, he approached a glass pulpit at the front of the stage, wearing a broad, self-satisfied smile. "Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you all for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, for far too long, our country has put its brave men and women in harm's way. Then the Iron Man arrived, and we thought the days of losing lives were behind us. Unfortunately, that technology was kept out of reach. That's not fair. That's not right. And it's just too bad." Pepper groaned at Justin's words. "Oh, Lord." "Well, that's petty," Gwen said. "Regardless, it was an impressive innovation that grabbed headlines worldwide. Well, today, my friends, the press is faced with quite a different problem. They're about to run out of ink." Justin joked, earning a few quiet claps and a cough. Coughing in embarrassment, he motioned for 2 people at the edge of the stage to remove the pulpit. "Get that out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, today I present to you the new face of the United States military, the Hammer drone. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Yeah. Woo." The stage began to whirl and shift as rows of large, militarized drones rose into view.
Each group of drones was designed to represent its branch of the military, equipped with specific equipment and weapons. The audience clapped and cheered, impressed by the sight of the rows of drones. Their enthusiasm further boosted Justin's ego. That's a hell of a lot better than some cheerleaders, let me tell you. But as revolutionary as this technology is, there will always be a need for humans to be present in the theater of war. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am proud to present to you the very first prototype of the Variable Threat Response Battlesuit and its pilot, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes. Justin said, pointing to a lone figure rising from the center of the stage. Unlike the rest of the drones, this militarized suit of armor was actually Tony Stark's Mk2 Iron Man armor. Inside the suit was Colonel James Rhodes. However, unlike its original design, the Mk2 had been retrofitted with a large arsenal of weapons and repainted in black and gray. The armor made for an impressive and intimidating sight, an actual war machine. Once entirely on stage, James gave the crowd a sharp salute, instantly followed by all the drones. "What?" Pepper asked, turning to a seemingly equally confused Natasha, unable to believe what she was seeing. "Dude, that's so cool," Harry exclaimed as Peter nodded in agreement. Justin was practically on cloud nine. Everything was going amazingly well. For all the headaches Ivan Vanko caused, he was worth all the trouble Justin went through. The sheer number of military contracts he would secure from his demonstration tonight would bolster his already considerable wealth. For America and its allies, Hammer Industries is reporting for. A loud rumble filled the skies above the pavilion, causing everyone to turn back to see a bright light flying in their direction. Like a glorious red and gold comet, Iron Man swooped into the pavilion and landed with a loud clang. As he stood up, the crowd's cheers and whoops shook the stage. "No way. Iron Man is here too," Peter said, grinning widely. "Remind me to get your dad a Christmas gift, Gwen." "You better not take that back," Gwen chuckled. "We've got trouble." "Give them a wave," Tony said as he walked over to stand beside James and waved to the cheering crowd. "Tony, there are civilians present." "I'm here on orders." "Let's not do this right now," James replied. "All these people are in danger. We need to get them out of here." "You have to trust me for the next 5 minutes," Tony said, his voice serious. "Yeah, I tried that. I got tossed around your house, remember?" James retorted. "Listen, I think he's working with Vanko." "Vanko's alive?" James asked, surprised. Tony nodded and moved to stand directly in front of Justin, his armor adding height and causing Justin to look up at him with increasing dread. "Where is he?" Tony demanded. "What?" Justin replied quickly, his face revealing no guilt. "Where's Vanko?" "Who?" "Tell me," Tony said, beginning to lose his patience. "What are you doing here, men?" Justin asked, stepping back slightly as Tony advanced. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," James shouted, panic rising in his voice. His suit's inner interface lit up with code as it was being compromised. Without warning, the minigun over his shoulder aimed itself at Tony. Behind James, all the drones raised their arms, weapons engaged. "Is that you?" Tony asked in alarm, bending his knees and preparing to take off. Peter felt his spider senses tingle and quickly realized that this was not part of the demonstration. "Oh no. No, I'm not doing that. That's not me. I can't move. I'm locked up. I'm locked up. Get out of here. Go. This whole system's been compromised." James yelled, his face contorted in fear as he struggled against the controls. Tony flew back and hovered in the air. Sensing the incoming danger, everyone in the pavilion began to run toward the exits. "Let's take it outside," Tony said, flying straight up to draw their gunfire away from the crowds. As he ascended into the night sky, James and the legion of drones opened fire. A hail of bullets turned the pavilion into a cacophony of gunfire as the rounds shattered the glass ceiling above. Shards of thick glass began to rain down on the escaping crowds, intensifying their screams as several people were injured. Realizing their target was getting away, the Air Force drones and James's suit activated their thrusters to give chase. Inside the suit, James could do nothing but scream as he blasted through the glass and into the sky. Following him, the Air Force drones soared into the night. "Come on. We have to get out of here." Peter shouted, grabbing Gwen and Harry. Despite his urgency, Peter had to wait for the stream of evacuees to clear the pavilion before he and his friends could escape. His free hand reached beneath his shirt, where his Spider-Man suit lay hidden. Peter! Gwen cried out in alarm, pointing at the drones on the stage. They were no longer immobile, they were now leaping off the stage. In their mechanical rampage, the drones showed no regard for anyone in their path. What do I do? I have to act. Peter thought, gritting his teeth as he watched a man get knocked aside by one of the drone's heavy arms. Just as he prepared to throw caution to the wind, Peter looked up and saw 12 glowing reddish-pink spheres. The spheres shifted and transformed into long, jagged blades. In a burst of energy, the blades flew through the air, slicing 12 of the drones into ribbons. Wait, is that? Gwen exclaimed while everyone in the pavilion watched as Atomic landed on the stage in a crouch. He's here, Peter whispered. Atomic stood tall and stared down at the chaos in front of him. His eyes moved quickly, noting the position of every person in the pavilion, including Peter, Gwen, Harry, Justin, Pepper, and Natasha. Not willing to waste another second, he shot forward and grabbed a woman who was about to be trampled by one of the drones. The woman, Sandra, gasped in his hold and watched as Atomic clenched his fist in the direction of the drone. She gasped in shock as the drone's body crumbled into a ball of steel. If you can, help anyone that you can, Atomic said as he created a large first aid kit. It was full of the most basic supplies that anyone could use. Sandra nodded as if in a trance and did as he said. Despite her usual mouse-like behavior, the woman did her best to help anyone she could on her way out of the pavilion. It was hard not to do so when a superhero personally asked you to help. 4 of the army drones turned to Atomic and fired their shoulder-mounted guns. The bullets ripped through the air and were about to reach Atomic when, all of a sudden, they stopped an inch away from the hero's back. Ha! Even if it was for a few seconds, it worked. Atomic thought with a grin. Turning around, Atomic reached out to the bullets and crushed them together. After a second, the ball of bullets transformed into a sphere of red plasma. With a yell, Atomic sent the ball of plasma through 2 of the drone's chests. The remaining 2 were crushed from the ground beneath, clamping over them. As he was about to reach the Navy drones, Atomic saw a man trying to crawl away due to a large piece of glass embedded in his thigh. I need to separate the people from the drones, Atomic thought as he landed on the ground. Entering a horse stance, he forced his powers through the ground and raised his arms. The ground trembled violently beneath everyone, sending ripples across the surface that caught the attention of those still gathered in the pavilion. To their astonishment, the earth began to rise, forming a powerful wave that surged toward them with an unexpected force. Some instinctively flinched, bracing for what they believed would be an impact with solid earth, but instead, they were enveloped by a bizarre sensation of plush softness as the wave rolled under them. This miraculous swell transported the bewildered crowd away from the looming drones, gently depositing them at the exits of the pavilion. In a simultaneous display of raw power, a colossal wall of steel burst forth from the ground, towering high and effectively severing the connection between the menacing drones and the frightened civilians. Atomic directed the crawling men toward Peter, Gwen, and Harry in the distance, trusting in Peter's capability to assist the men. Holy crap! Did you see that? One person shouted, eyes wide with disbelief. He saved us! Another exclaimed, their voice trembling with fear and relief. Let's get out of here! Someone insisted, urgency lacing their words as they glanced back at the chaos, adrenaline fueling their desperate escape. These were just a few frantic comments exchanged among the crowd as they hurried away, hearts racing and breaths coming in quick, panicked gasps. At the sight of the injured crawling man being slid right in front of him, Peter moved without hesitation. Harry, help me get him out of here. All right. Harry moved in and helped Peter carry the bleeding man away from the chaos behind them, followed quickly by Gwen. As they ran, she turned back and watched as bright lights and explosions rocked the now empty pavilion. Back with Atomic, he pushed himself up and turned down to see his right arm smoking slightly. During the process of helping everyone escape and creating the steel wall, one of the Navy drones shot a volley of rockets at him. He had been quick enough to have created a large adamantium shield over his right arm to block the attack. The resulting explosion had knocked him back. Okay, enough games, Atomic growled and stood, his arms glowing with energy. What ensued could only be described as total devastation. Atomic soared through the air with remarkable speed, wielding every tool at his disposal to annihilate the relentless swarm of drones that filled the pavilion. The stakes were high. He couldn't allow even one to escape and potentially wreak havoc on the expo. As he darted from one drone to the next, a surge of curiosity compelled him to scan each unique model before delivering the final blow. The intricate designs and advanced technology of the drones fascinated him. He knew that their blueprints would prove handy in the future.
Rag.
Atomic yelled as he smashed the last remaining drone into countless pieces with star rage using 1,000 pounds of force. Atomic gasped tiredly as he stood among a sea of destroyed drones. As he recovered, he walked over to a lone glowing disk. It was one of Ivan Vanko's imitation arc reactors. After scanning it, he crushed it and transformed the drone's remains into water.
There.
No end of movie explosions for you. Atomic thought and turned to see Pepper, Justin, and several security crew staring at him in awe and disbelief. To them, he had destroyed a small army of highly sophisticated and well-armed drones with seeming ease. Make an announcement for everyone in the expo to get underground. Call in the NYPD and every available ambulance. The drones chasing after Iron Man won't think twice about shooting at anyone on the ground. Atomic yelled out, hoping that they had already made such a call at the start of it all. Without another word, Atomic shot out to the night sky and chased after the drones in their pursuit of Iron Man. Holy shit, Justin mumbled in a daze. The pain in his shoulder from when Natasha grabbed him was momentarily forgotten. For once, I agree with you, Pepper said, quickly walking to the control center behind the stage, with Justin following closely behind. Yes, I need you to make a widespread announcement for everyone at the expo to go underground. Also, contact the NYPD and several ambulances. There's been an attack. She spoke urgently on the phone, then turned to a nervous technician. No, please don't call the authorities, Justin interjected, trying to stand in front of Pepper. Justin attempted to block Pepper, but she swiftly moved him aside. Step aside. Step aside, she instructed, positioning herself next to the technician. Now, tell me everything you know. Ivan Vanko sat motionless in his chair, disbelief etched across his features. He had meticulously crafted each detail of his plan with deadly precision, every move designed to dismantle Tony Stark's legacy and rid himself of the Mun whose family had long been his own undoing. In his mind, victory was within reach, a destructive symphony of revenge that would resonate through the corridors of the Stark Expo. But in an instant, his carefully orchestrated scheme had been thrown into chaos. A red and white stranger had appeared to ruin it all. The new, unexpected hero had appeared with unimaginable power, obliterating 24 of his drones in mere moments. The sight of his destroyed drones filled Ivan with a burning rage. With a growl of frustration, Ivan pushed himself up from his chair. He stormed through the halls of Hammer Industries towards his lab, where the next phase of his plan awaited. Blasts and gunfire erupted in the skies above the expo. Tony flew in and out, skillfully avoiding the deadly hail from the chasing drones and his out-of-control best friend. His evasive maneuvers caused the gunfire to continue on its destructive path toward the ground. Civilians below screamed as bullets rained down around them. The Air Force drone's shoulder armor opened and released dozens of small missiles. With a quick roll, Tony dodged the missiles, allowing them to fly straight toward a crowd trying to move into a building and away from the chaos. Shit, Tony said and changed directions. Tony, the people. James yelled and watched helplessly as the missiles flew down. I know. Jarvis. Increasing power to thrusters, Jarvis, Tony's ever-helpful AI, said. Immediately, the thrusters on Tony's suit burst with power, increasing his speed. But before he could reach the missiles to destroy them before they reached the innocents below, Atomic flew over them and raised his hands. A massive barrier of energy formed over the people, leaving them transfixed by its glow. The barrier formed into a half-sphere where the missiles crashed into it, containing the explosion within it and releasing the blowback into the sky. Atomic looked back at the people and created several more entrances to the building. Go. Get inside. His voice snapped everyone out of their stunned states and got them moving. Several people yelled their appreciation and smiled at the hero. Who the hell is that? James asked as Tony swerved back into the sky. That's Atomic. Leave the people to him, Natasha said from over the comms in Tony and James's suits. She was currently at Hammer Industries within Vanko's control room. Her fingers were fast at work on the keyboard as she tried to reboot James's suit.
The Power Ranger?
Tony said before his eyes landed on the large globe structure at the center of the expo.
He grinned and flew in its direction. All right, we'll leave it to him. Rhodey, you still locked on? A hail of machine gun fire was all his answer.
That's an affirmative. Drop your socks and grab your Crocs. We're about to get wet on this ride.
Wait.
James yelled as Tony navigated through the globe with careful precision. Unfortunately, the other Air Force drones lacked that same control and ended up crashing into the globe, resulting in a brilliant ball of fire erupting inside.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Had to thin out the herd. What's your 20? Tony asked as he looked around the skies, but he grunted as James's suit struck him on his back. The two descended in the sky and crashed into the Oracle Biodome, making impact and rolling along a small stream of water as they came to a stop in a large Japanese-inspired garden. Atomic ignored them and flew right at the collapsing form of the flaming globe sphere. He released a wave of his power and extinguished the roaring flames. Reaching out, he constructed glowing, long, arm-like appendages and pulled the globe back into its original position. The glowing arms released a wave of energy, rebuilding and refrigerating the globe back to its original state. The people below watched the light show in awe. Some even recorded the scene before them. Amongst them stood Peter, Gwen, and Harry. The man they had helped earlier sat beside them with Sandra applying gauze over his injured thigh. Once he was done, everyone cheered loudly, causing Atomic to turn to them. He examined the crowd and found that there wasn't anyone heavily injured from the explosion. His eyes landed on Gwen and his two new friends. His eyes then moved to the injured man from before. Lying down, everyone in the area gave him room as he crouched beside the wounded man. Good work, Atomic said to Sandra, who felt a deep, powerful feeling rise within her.
Thank you, she said.
Atomic held a hand out and created a wheelchair from thin air. He picked up the man and helped him sit. As he did so, he quickly scanned the man's injury.
That's good. The glass didn't reach your artery.
Ambulances are on the way.
They'll take care of you, Atomic said.
You saved my life earlier.
Thank you.
The man said, grateful. It wasn't just me, Atomic said, turning to Peter, Harry, and Sandra. These people did as much as me. Can I trust you to get him to an ambulance?
He asked them.
Yeah, you can count on us, Peter said. Harry and Sandra nodded their agreement. In the distance, sounds of explosions and gunfire rocked the biosphere. Atomic began to float and turned to everyone around him. You all need to evacuate. This isn't over yet. In a burst of speed, Atomic flew away toward the biosphere, leaving everyone to watch as he became a stream of light in the night sky. Peter couldn't help but watch Atomic disappear with a growing sense of resolve. He now knew what he had to do. What he had to be. It was time for him to be Spider-Man and use his powers to help like Atomic. An intense battle erupted within the vibrant greenery of the biosphere, where Tony and James now stood resolute against Ivan, who was clad in a formidable heavy-duty suit bristling with newly upgraded electric whips. The air crackled with tension as the fight unfolded, each combatant fiercely vying for supremacy. In a different reality, Tony and James might have found themselves overwhelmed, exhausting their arsenal against the relentless legion of hammer drones. But at this moment, they were fully equipped and determined to outlast Ivan and his advanced weaponry. Even so, the Russian adversary was not to be underestimated. His combat skills were as polished as the sleek armor encasing him, and the whips he wielded crackled with lethal energy, ready to strike at a moment's notice. With fierce determination, Tony unleashed a brilliant crimson laser, its beam cutting through the air like a lightning bolt, obliterating everything in its merciless path. The sheer intensity of the energy made the surroundings tremble. Ivan, quick to react, dove to the side, narrowly escaping the onslaught. He swung his whips with precision, their tips glinting ominously as they slashed across the garden, expertly targeting Tony's forearm and severing his control over the deadly laser. With a powerful flick, Ivan sent Tony hurtling through the thick trunk of a tree, the impact causing the wood to splinter and debris to scatter. Instinctively, Ivan raised an arm to shield himself from the relentless barrage of bullets rained down by James, the crack of gunfire echoing against the lush backdrop. Using his whips again, Ivan wrapped James's neck and pulled the war machine right to him. Pulling his arm back, Ivan punched James across the garden. Tony flew over Ivan and slammed a fist into the Russian's back, staggering him briefly. Growing, Ivan spun and unleashed a combo of punches before swinging a whip around Tony's neck. The whip's strength and electric power made it hard for Tony to break free, leaving him to struggle. Seeing his friend in trouble, James began firing off his bullets from his position on the ground. Ivan ignored the bullets and marched over to James. Ivan stomped a foot over James with a metal clang, causing the Colonel to grunt. Ivan slid back his helmet and grinned down at James. Tony glared at Ivan and stepped back, the whip around his neck pulling Ivan away from James. James quickly tried to stand, but a whip wrapped around his neck as he got on his knee. Both Iron Men tried to pull away from the whips but found it impossible. Arcs of lightning streamed off the weapons and jumped into their suits, causing their systems to begin to glitch. A loud crash echoed above them as Atomic flew through one of the biosphere's glass panels. Ivan looked up just in time to see Atomic fly down to land before him in a split second. Atomic placed his hands on Ivan's arms, and after a brief moment, the armor and whips around them shattered into pieces, leaving Ivan utterly stunned. Pulling an arm back, Atomic punched Ivan's chest with enough force to send the man flying back into a boulder. "You saw that, right?" Tony asked James. "Yeah." "Did Vanko's armor fall apart?" James said. "I weakened the molecular structure of the materials in his armor," Atomic said without turning to both Iron Men as he walked up to Ivan, who was gasping in pain. His chest armor was bent and cracked. "I'm assuming you're the one behind this entire attack. People could have gotten killed." Once his breathing was back in control, Ivan cracked a bloody grin. Dozens of American lives were lost even with their gods there to protect them. That was the idea, at least until you came. Now I take you three with me to hell." Ivan then activated the detonator in his suit and waited. After a few seconds, he blinked in confusion as his detonation sequence failed to work. "When I destroyed your drones, I figured out you placed explosives in them. I made sure to disable them. Still, I was surprised you had one installed in your suit as well. I made sure to disable that one as well when I took your suit's arms," Atomic said from above Ivan. Reaching down, Atomic placed a hand on Ivan's shoulder and transmuted the rest of his armor into sand. The sand shifted and wrapped around Ivan into a tight, inescapable straitjacket. "You're going to answer for what you've done," Atomic said resolutely. Ivan glared at Atomic but remained silent. He had lost. There was nothing more he could do. At least for now. "Hey, Red Ranger. That's our guy," Tony said as he walked up to Atomic. Weary of getting any closer in fear of the red and white hero reducing his own armor to dust. "We get first crack at him." "Mr. Stark," Atomic said with a steady voice. But deep inside, he was geeking out at having the man who would one day save the universe standing before him. "Colonel Rhodes," he said with a respectful nod to James. "Let's backtrack for a second. You said you took out all the other drones? By yourself? Seems far-fetched." Tony asked. "He's telling the truth, sir. I have footage of the pavilion where Mr. Atomic single-handedly eliminated the rest of the hammer drones," Jarvis said, playing the footage for Tony and James to watch. "Damn," James muttered as he watched Atomic fight. The entire battle lasted only 2 minutes. James had read and seen the reports on Atomic. After the attack in Harlem, the army had gathered any information and footage on Atomic. They were particularly interested in his ability to create whatever he wanted from thin air. "Okay, I'll concede. Not bad," Tony said as the front of his helmet snapped open. "So, who are you? Really?" "Sorry, can't tell you. Defeats the purpose of the whole secret identity thing," Atomic said and looked around at the once beautiful Japanese garden. With a stomp of his foot, a wave of power extended out from his position. As the wave washed over the ruined patches of grass, burnt greenery, knocked over trees, and craters, they were all instantly erased, returning the ruined garden to its original state. "What did you do? What was that?" Tony asked, not believing what he just saw. Even Ivan was stunned at what had occurred. Tony had heard about Atomic and his exploits throughout New York, but he had been too preoccupied with figuring out the palladium poisoning that was slowly killing him. Still, he had heard about Atomic's ability to change the reality around him seemingly, but Tony had always dismissed those rumors as nonsense. However, Seeing Atomic's powers firsthand, Tony was left gobsmacked. Some sort of illusion? No, this is solid. Maybe matter manipulation. Tony muttered as he had Jarvis examine his surroundings after snapping his helmet closed. Now that everything is handled, I have to get going. I'll leave this guy to you then, Atomic said and began to float into the air. After giving both stunned men a small salute, he shot out of the biosphere and into the night sky. In the aftermath of that fateful night, the events surrounding the attack marked a pivotal turning point for Atomic, whose popularity surged to unprecedented levels. The release of security footage and countless videos captured by bystanders showcased his heroic feats, rapidly circulating across the internet and various media outlets, leaving a global audience captivated. People everywhere were left in awe, not only of his extraordinary powers but also of his unwavering commitment to prioritizing the safety and well-being of others. Among the countless videos that gained traction online, one stood out as a poignant testament to his character. It focused not on Atomic's impressive strength in neutralizing a small legion of hammer drones but rather on a profoundly human moment, his meticulous creation of a wheelchair for an injured Mun at the expo. Viewers watched in admiration as he gently lifted the Mun and carefully set him down, demonstrating a tenderness that highlighted his compassion far more than his destructive capabilities against the drones. This act of kindness resonated, showcasing him as a hero who values humanity above all else. By the end of that night, the name Atomic had become synonymous with hope and heroism, echoing through the hearts and minds of millions across the United States and beyond. Ever since the dramatic events of the Stark Expo, where Atomic's valiant intervention turned a potential disaster into a celebrated triumph, public discourse surrounding his extraordinary abilities and his role in society has surged significantly. While the vast majority of conversations cast him in a positive light, as is often the case with media narratives, the shadows of skepticism managed to capture the most attention. The world has transformed since the emergence of mutants in the early 1900s, a radio host remarked, his voice imbued with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. It seems as though individuals with superpowers materialize every other week. But none quite like Atomic. A Mun who possesses the uncanny ability to manifest anything he desires. This unchecked power rests in the hands of someone who, for reasons unknown, conceals his face from us. I, for one, cannot place my trust in him. What if his acts of heroism are merely an elaborate charade designed to win our confidence? Why does Atomic hide his identity? A politician pressed, his brow furrowed in concern. What secrets lie beneath that helmet? How can we place our faith in a Mun who is unwilling to reveal who he truly is? Some researchers speculate that he has dominion over matter and atoms. Another voice chimed in, laced with alarm. If that's accurate, then what's stopping him from erasing humanity if he ever chooses to withdraw his protection? Isn't it evident that Atomic is a mutant? A newscaster argued, her tone heated and impassioned. Why hasn't the government detained him already? He's a catastrophe waiting to unfold. Unchecked power has been shown to lead to chaos time and time again, a U.S. government official declared, his voice resolute and unyielding. Atomic's abilities are excessively formidable and must be regulated. He cannot be permitted to continue as a vigilante without oversight. What are we debating here? A passionate New Yorker interjected, her voice rising above the honks and horns of traffic. Atomic is out there daily, saving lives. Just the other day, my mother's car had a flat tire while she was dropping my kid brother off at school. Not a single person stopped to help her. And you know what happened next? Atomic swooped down from the sky, fixed the tire, and even upgraded my mother's car. I don't care what those clowns in the Senate or the news outlets say. He's a bona fide hero. After all the good Atomic has done, why are people still criticizing him? Another echoed in disbelief. Is it so hard to believe that he's simply a guy trying to do what's right? Hold on, Tony Stark and his friend get medals for what happened at the Stark Expo, but Atomic doesn't. What kind of sense does that make? A popular YouTuber said incredulously. Shouldn't he have gotten one, too? Something smells fishy. These sentiments and countless others filled the airwaves and newspaper columns, capturing the attention of influential government officials, ambitious politicians, seasoned journalists, leaders of influential organizations, and even criminal masterminds, all intrigued by the implications of Atomic's presence. Yet, when it came to the individual at the center of this swirling maelstrom, Atomic/Wyatt remained unfazed. The cacophony of public opinion was a distant murmur compared to his current mission. His focus was entirely directed towards a far more pressing matter: the kidnapping of Serena and the murder of Luigi. Red and blue lights flickered ominously over Luigi's pizzeria, casting a surreal glow on the scene as police officers cordoned off the restaurant with bright yellow tape. A growing crowd of onlookers, drawn by curiosity and concern, gathered outside but were held back by several officers, their expressions a mix of confusion and dread as they stood at the perimeter of the crime scene. Among the throng were several of Luigi's longtime friends and fellow restaurateurs, their faces etched with anguish and hopelessness. They stood, powerless witnesses, as two paramedics solemnly carried Luigi's lifeless body into the waiting ambulance on a stretcher. The blanket over him was saturated with blood, dark and chilling, staining the fabric a dark red. "I can't believe it. Who could do such a terrible thing?" One bystander lamented, shaking his head in disbelief. "Oh no, not Luigi." Another whispered, tears welling in her eyes as she struggled to comprehend the tragedy unfolding before her. "Did I hear that right? You're saying little Serena is missing?" A voice exclaimed, panic creeping into the crowd's murmurings. In the midst of the crowd stood Wyatt, frozen in shock. An empty stare replaced his once easygoing expression as his mind grappled with the surreal reality before him. In his right hand, he clutched a bag containing a celebration cake adorned with colorful frosting meant to mark the occasion of Luigi's restaurant's grand reopening. Wyatt's world dulled around him. The sounds of sirens and frantic voices faded into a distant hum, eclipsed by a piercing ring that echoed in his ears. His body felt strangely heavy, rooted to the ground as he battled against the storm of emotion swirling inside him. He wanted to breach the barrier set by the police, but his limbs refused to cooperate. What? Wait. I thought. But it hasn't even been a month. The thought echoed futilely in his mind as he stared numbly, helplessly, watching the ambulance drive away with Luigi's body. Suddenly, a fragment of a conversation caught his attention, cutting through the fog that enveloped him. "We're searching for a girl named Serena Lombardi. Witness reports indicate that she was forcibly taken into a gray 1998 Chevrolet Express. We have issued an APB for the vehicle." "Yeah, this may be connected to the recent wave of kidnappings," said NYPD Detective Jackson Peralta, his brow furrowing as he adjusted his earpiece, clearly distressed by the severity of the situation. "I hope this isn't linked to the Russian human trafficking ring we have been monitoring. If it is, we only have around 3 hours to find her before she disappears forever." A jolt of urgency surged through Wyatt as if a bolt of lightning had struck him. Ignoring the cake he had dropped on the sidewalk, he pushed through the crowd. Once he found an alleyway away from prying eyes, he paused for a moment to take a deep, steady breath to calm his mind. With a swift motion, he summoned his suit, and in an instant, he took to the sky. Atomic tapped the side of his helmet and initiated a call. "Wyatt? I'm surprised to hear from you. What can I dash?" came Phil Coulson's voice. "Coulson. I need your help." Atomic's voice was urgent, a mixture of desperation and determination as he scanned the streets below. "What do you need?" Coulson responded, his voice steady and focused. "Time's up, Fatman. Where's the money?" "What? You said I had a month. I still have time." "So you don't have the money then? Whatever, Reznov, take the girl." "You're not taking my daughter. You hear me? Get away." Serena slowly blinked as the echoes of gunfire replayed in her mind. Her thoughts were clouded by the events that had transpired not even half an hour ago. The memories looped endlessly. She recalled the moment when the group of armed men entered her father's restaurant. Each of their faces was vivid in her memory, their thick Russian accents cutting through her mind as they made their demands. The men advanced toward her father, their postures intimidating as they wielded bats and firearms. But her father remained steadfast and fearless. He insisted he still had more time to collect the money he owed, arguing that they were 10 days too early. Yet the Russians didn't care. They wanted what they came for, money. And when that became impossible, they came for her. Serena was petrified. She couldn't move, talk, or run. All she could do was watch as her father attempted to protect her. How she wished he hadn't. If he hadn't stood up to them, perhaps he would still be alive. She would have to live with a haunting memory of watching her father being beaten and gunned down right in front of her. She hadn't even been allowed to hug him one last time before the men grabbed her and bound her hands. With little concern for her well-being, they tossed her into a van and drove off to who knew where, leaving behind the lifeless body of the man who had raised and loved her. Serena didn't move. She didn't talk. All she could do was stare blankly as the men took her somewhere that wasn't home. Feeling the van come to a stop, Serena watched as the doors opened to reveal two of the men from earlier speaking to a well-dressed old man. The old man looked her up and down, nodding as if satisfied. Good. She's got good hips and well-developed breasts. Pretty face, too. She'll fetch a good price. Reznov, put her with the rest and then meet me at my car. We have another stop to make tonight. An old man dressed in an expensive suit said before walking away. Come here. I said, come here. Reznov yelled, grabbing her by the ankle and dragging her out of the van. Serena cried out as he grasped a handful of her hair, forcing her to look at him. In that moment, she doubted she would ever forget the face of the man who shot her father like an animal. Behave, girl. We don't like to harm the product. But we will, Reznov said, beginning to drag her through a dark loading dock. Serena followed behind him without any resistance. Any fight she had in her died alongside her father. Even so, she allowed herself one last thought. Somebody, save me. Ted let out a loud yawn as he turned the corner. It had been a long day of work, and he was ready to call it a night. I need to find a new job. My back feels like it's going to snap, he muttered as the tools in the back of his old Chevrolet Express rattled during another turn. He was now only 2 blocks away from home. Suddenly, a large pair of glowing hands swooped down from above and grabbed the van. Ted let out a shriek as he and his vehicle were lifted into the air. His world went sideways as he was pulled out of the van and slammed against the side of a building. A rope quickly tied itself around him, a black cloth was wrapped around his eyes, and a gag was shoved into his mouth. Atomic placed the van on the roof of a nearby building and ripped off the back doors. He illuminated the inside of the van, only to find it filled with old tools and dirty PVC pipes. No. Damn it. Atomic growled as he clutched his helmet. He had been searching the city for over an hour, stopping any van that vaguely matched the detective's description but finding nothing. Time was running out, and his anxiety was growing with each passing minute. Where are you, Serena? Where did they take you? He said, his hands clenched tightly in frustration. Where? Just then, a soft ringtone played from within his helmet, breaking his rising panic. Wyatt, my team has identified 7 vans in the city that match your description, all observed around 9:45 p.m. We ran a background check on 6 of the vans and found them to be clean. The 7th was unregistered and is now located in a docking bay in Bayonne, New Jersey. There's a lot of movement going on there. I'm sending you the coordinates now. I apologize for the delay. I hope this lead is the one you need, Coulson said. Got it. Thank you, Coulson, Atomic replied before ending the call. He quickly placed the van back on the ground and fixed the damage he had caused, also undoing Ted's bindings while putting him in his van. In a burst of power, Atomic launched himself into the night sky. Ripping the cloth from his eyes, Ted stepped out of his van and looked around the empty, dark street with wide eyes. What the hell just happened? Move your asses. We need to get these on board in 20 minutes. Ludmil, a member of the Russian mob, said as he rushed a group of men leading 4 scared girls into a green Koenig shipping container. Move it. Please. Please, just let me go. The young college girl begged, her voice trembling with fear as her brown hair fell around her anxious face. Her wide eyes searched the faces of her captors, desperate for any sign of mercy. I won't tell anyone about this. Her plea was abruptly cut off as one of the men, a bald man with a tattoo on his face gripping a stun baton, flicked the device to life. A crackling burst of electricity surged through her, and she convulsed in shock and collapsed to her knees. Shut the hell up and get in there. We don't have all night. The group of terrified girls hurried into the Koenigs, not willing to be electrocuted as well. The brown-haired girl who had been shocked was then roughly kicked inside as well. Her soft crying gained no sympathy from the cold-hearted men. Only annoyance at how she was slowing down their tight schedule. All right. That's the last of them. Ludmil shouted, his voice rising above the sound of clanging metal as the final Koenigs was secured shut. The crew sprang into action, their movements a well-rehearsed choreography of urgency and teamwork. Deckhands scurried across the expanse of the ship, finishing last-minute preparations with the precision of seasoned sailors eager to set sail. "Cast off all lines," one crew member called out, deftly untying the ropes that tethered them to the dock. "Shove off." "Weigh anchor," came the command from the helm, and the heavy chain clanked as it lifted from the sea. Inside the dim confines of one of the shipping containers, a group of terrified girls struggled to hear the distant shouts of the crew. The harsh jolt of the ship disembarking from port sent them into a frenzy, their cries mingling in a chorus of desperation that filled the cramped space. "No, no, no, no," wailed an 18-year-old girl, her voice trembling with fear. She pressed herself tightly against the cold metal wall, her mascara streaking down her cheeks like dark rivers of despair. "I want to go home. Daddy. Mommy." The words tumbled out in a desperate plea. "Someone's coming, right?" Another girl, a 21-year-old blonde with wide, frantic eyes, clutched at the edges of her shirt. "We're going to get saved, right?" Her words came in rapid bursts, a frantic attempt to keep hope alive amid the encroaching darkness. "Help. Somebody. Help me," cried yet another girl, her fists pounding against the sides of the container, each strike a mix of anger and fear. In the far corner, shrouded in shadows, Serena sat quietly, her head resting on her drawn-up knees. Her dull eyes, void of the light of hope, surveyed the chaos surrounding her. With a heavy heart, she watched the panicking girls, their pleas falling into an abyss of despair, while she felt an overwhelming sense of defeat wash over her. "No one's coming," Serena whispered. Everyone inside the Konix jolted as a thunderous explosion reverberated through the ship, shaking the walls around them. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant crack of gunfire and the piercing screams that echoed like banshees in their ears. A sudden, bone-rattling splash sounded nearby, causing the Konix to sway alarmingly from side to side. Terror-stricken shrieks filled the cramped space, and Serena, now fully alert, gripped the wall with all her strength, her heart racing. "There. He's there. Shoot him," a voice yelled, panic lacing every syllable. "Die, you bastard," another shouted, desperation woven into the frantic tone. "No. Don't drop me," came a plea, heavy with fear. A scream quickly followed. For several agonizing minutes, the chaos unfolded, a cacophony of madness that seemed unending. But then, as if the world had suddenly pressed a mute button, a suffocating silence enveloped the ship. No one dared to utter a word, the air thick with dread. Out of nowhere, the sounds of metallic bangs echoed one after another, each clang reverberating through the walls and growing ever closer. With each resounding thud, a wave of fear washed over the trapped girls, gripping their hearts in a merciless hold. At last, the formidable steel doors of their shipping container swung open with a resonant clang, revealing a silhouette shrouded in the dim, flickering light cast by the overhead lights of the ship. Seeing the mysterious figure, all the girls screamed. The figure stepped forward, raising a hand that shimmered with an ethereal glow, conjuring a radiant orb that chased away the oppressive darkness of the once pitch-black interior, illuminating the container's cold, metal walls. "You're all safe now," Atomic said as his cape billowed behind him. "Come on. You can all go home." It's Atomic. New York's hero. The blonde-haired girl said with a smile as relief washed over them all. "We're saved. We can go home." One by one, they all exited the container, leaving Serena behind. "Serena." Atomic murmured at the sight of her, his voice barely above a whisper as his shoulders sagged under the weight of an enormous burden that had finally been lifted. How do you know my name?" Serena asked tentatively, her voice quivering with a mix of fear and uncertainty. The flicker of gratitude for being saved ignited a small flame within her, but the heavy shadow of her father's death still loomed over her, suffocating her spirit. As Atomic stepped into the Konix, a brilliant flash of light enveloped his helmet, revealing Wyatt, drenched in sweat and visibly shaken. His eyes, wide and filled with a kaleidoscope of relief and deep sorrow, locked onto hers. The sight of Wyatt sent a jolt through Serena, and she blinked in disbelief at what she was seeing. "Wyatt, you're..." Without letting her finish, he stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her with a desperate urgency that spoke volumes. "Serena. I'm so sorry. Luigi. I'm so sorry." With the warmth of her friend's embrace surrounding her, the dam that had held her emotions at bay finally broke. Tears welled in Serena's eyes, thick and unstoppable, as heartache washed over her like a torrential downpour. The reality of her loss crashed into her as if a floodgate had opened, releasing all the anguish she had fought to contain.
Wyatt, my papa he's dead. They killed him. He's gone.
The words poured out in broken gasps, each syllable weighing heavily in the air between them.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Wyatt whispered, the pain in his voice mirroring the torment in her heart. Within him, a thunderous wave of guilt surged.
This is my fault. Luigi died because of me, because of my inaction. I'm so sorry, Serena.
As he rematerialized his helmet, he lifted Serena in his arms and carried her out of the Konex. What happened after that was a blur to the hero. Atomic did his best to fulfill his duties as the hero that all the kidnapped girls on board saw him as despite his internal distress, and he successfully directed the now damaged ship back to port, where a legion of police and ambulances awaited. One by one, the girls were attended to by the paramedics while the police moved on board to arrest the men that Atomic had apprehended, each of whom sported severe injuries.
Good work, Atomic.
Thanks to you, many of these girls will be able to go home tonight, Detective Peralta said as he observed the police and paramedics working.
Still,
I recommend you get out of here now. Not everyone here appreciates the work you do for the city. He glanced over at several police officers, who were eyeing Atomic suspiciously with their hands resting on their sidearms. Atomic didn't reply but nodded. He began to float into the air and paused, turning to look at Serena, whom a female paramedic was treating. Serena looked up at Atomic and gave him a slight nod.
I'll be okay now. Go on, she thought with a forced smile.
Atomic nodded back, as if hearing her, and soared away deeper into the city. He descended and landed on the Central Park Tower, where he removed his helmet. The wind at that height caused his hair and cape to flow in the air as he stared blankly at the city below. Tears streamed down his tired face as he cried silently. Even with his extraordinary powers, he had failed to save Luigi and prevent Serena from being kidnapped. He had failed them. Nothing had changed since his parents were killed when he was young and powerless. Wyatt couldn't protect those who mattered most despite all he had accomplished. All this power, and I couldn't even save him. He thought with clenched fists. New York's hero, what a joke. Wyatt hissed. In the days following Luigi's tragic death, Serena and Wyatt moved through life on autopilot, their minds clouded by a heavy fog of sorrow. Wyatt, who was better able to cope with the grief of losing someone he now, albeit very late, considered family, took it upon himself to plan the funeral and memorial service. Every meticulous detail, from the delicate arrangement of flowers to the selection of an elegant casket, was handled with care and respect, all funded out of his own pocket. He poured his heart into this process, determined to honor Luigi's memory. A good man taken too soon. While the weight of grief pressed heavily on both of them, Serena chose to remain silent about Wyatt's alter ego, Atomic. For her, nothing mattered more than for her to honor her father's legacy with a farewell that would reflect his life and the love he gave her. Even with this in mind, going through the funeral process was painful. Thankfully, she found strength in Wyatt's constant presence, and she was deeply thankful for his support. If he hadn't been there for her, she doubted she would have been able to do anything. To Serena, Wyatt's company was a refuge, a protective buffer against the painful realities of her loss. She instinctively reached for him in their quiet moments together, seeking solace and clinging to him as one might grasp a beloved security blanket. His presence was a lifeline for her, born not from romantic inclinations but from an urgent need for stability. In Wyatt's case, he could relax from his duties as Atomic thanks to the whispers and rumors of a new red and blue spider-themed hero emerging to patrol the city. Wyatt felt a modest sense of relief, knowing that the city was in capable hands while he helped Serena through such hard times. The funeral service unfolded in an intimate setting, overshadowed by a somber atmosphere that seemed to absorb the heartache of all who attended. The muted tones of the gathered friends, Luigi's chosen family from his decades living in Harlem, reflected their collective sorrow. With only a handful of relatives able to travel from distant states, those who could arrive wrapped their arms around Serena. One dreary afternoon, a man clad in a dark, somber suit appeared at Serena's doorstep, delivering news that felt both unreal and heavy. He informed her of the substantial payout from her father's life insurance policy, a safeguard Luigi had arranged shortly after first being threatened by the Russians. For many, such unexpected financial gain might elicit excitement or relief, but for Serena, it sent her spiraling deeper into her sorrow, spirals of tears spilling down her cheeks. Serena's aunt, Lucille LaRusso, one of the few family members who made the trip from California, offered to step in and help Serena to navigate through the complex legal landscape, ensuring that the funds would be securely transferred to Serena's bank account. Once the funeral ceremonies drew to a close, an overwhelming desire to sever any remaining ties to her past consumed Serena. As the now legal owner of her father's beloved restaurant and their family home, she found herself desperate to sell the building that had become an incessant reminder of that fateful night. The very thought of stepping inside filled her with dread. Instead, she decided to stay in a nearby hotel, the costs graciously covered by Wyatt, who remained her unwavering confidant through the storm of emotions. With a heavy heart, Serena made the decision to sell her father's restaurant and the space above it. Two of Luigi's longtime friends expressed interest in purchasing the property. They were eager to expand their own restaurant and were excited about the opportunity to continue serving food in the location where Luigi's restaurant once thrived, as a way to honor him. Pleased with their offer, Serena agreed to sell them the building at a price they could easily afford. When it was all said and done, her Aunt Lucille had offered Serena to stay with her and her son back in California until she reached adulthood, when she could decide what she wanted to do. An offer Serena had accepted after several days of thinking. Soon, the day of departure arrived with an air of heavy finality. At John F. Kennedy Airport, Serena found herself standing shoulder to shoulder with Wyatt and her aunt. Clutching a single carry-on bag, she carried nothing but a few clothes and cherished family photographs, faded memories of her life with her father and late mother. Everything else was left behind or sold. Our flight should depart soon. I'm going to call Daniel and let him know we should be on our way back soon. I'll leave you two to say your goodbyes, Lucille said with a sad smile as she went to take a seat to call her son, leaving Wyatt and Serena alone. Your aunt is a good person, Wyatt said to Serena, who had her arm locked around his. I think you'll be in good hands. Still, you'll be moving to California. Talk about a downgrade. He joked, eliciting a genuine smile from Serena. That's true, Serena said. But I think it's a good change. This city, these streets, they all remind me of him. I can't handle that. At least not right now. Wyatt nodded. Yeah, I understand. Still, I'll be sure to visit. Thanks. I'd like that, Serena said. How fast can you fly, by the way? She added in a whisper. This was the first time she had ever asked him about his powers. So far, if I really push myself, a little over 1,200 kilometers per hour, Wyatt said with a grin. It would take me around 4 hours to get to California, give or take. Isn't that kind of slow? Hey, when I first started flying, the most I could do was 300 kilometers an hour. 1,200 is a big jump in speed. My flight is gonna take 6 hours. You're telling me that the Great Atomic can't fly any faster than 4 hours. Never mind. I'm not visiting you anymore. Wyatt said and looked away from Serena. After a second, the two began to chuckle lightly. Flight 616 from JFK to LAX will now depart in 30 minutes. All passengers, please proceed to Gate 7. Came the announcement from the airport speakers. Serena frowned and tightened her grip on Wyatt as everyone sitting outside Gate 7 began to line up. Lucille stood up and waited for Serena with a patient smile. Well, this is it, Serena said. Yeah. Serena stepped back and looked into Wyatt's eyes. They stared at one another for what felt like forever until Serena moved forward and hugged Wyatt with as much strength as she could muster. Be safe. Okay? Be sure to visit me, okay? Serena said into Wyatt's chest. Wyatt agreed to everything she said without any hesitation. With a shaky breath, Serena let him go and walked over to stand with her aunt. Before she entered the jetway, Serena stopped and looked back to give Wyatt another look, as if to burn this moment into her memory. He smiled and gave her a small wave. It's time to go, sweetie, Lucille said with a warm, motherly smile. You'll see him again. I'm sure of it. Serena nodded, fresh tears in her eyes. Turning to Wyatt, she gave him a large, warm smile, which he returned. Sensing the passengers behind them beginning to grow annoyed, Serena rushed into the plane and took her first-class seat. A parting gift from Wyatt. Wyatt moved to the large glass windows and watched as Serena's plane rolled onto the runway and departed. A small part of him wanted to fly beside it, but if he did, he felt as if he would just travel to California with Serena. He settled for watching the plane disappear from behind the glass of the airport. Now all alone, Wyatt turned around and left the airport. The ticket he had bought to enter the departure lounge went forgotten in his jacket pocket. Once outside of the airport, Wyatt's somber expression tightened into one of determination. Donning his suit, he flew through the skies and began his new mission: to find the men responsible for Luigi's death and bring them to justice. After sneezing, 14-year-old Jubilation Lee quickly covered her nose with a tissue and groaned. For the past month, she had been suffering from the worst cold of her life. It had become so concerning that her worried mother took her to the hospital for a checkup. The doctors were puzzled by her cold's prolonged nature and performed routine tests to determine the cause, including a blood test. That had been a week ago, and Jubilation hadn't received any updates. Fortunately, it seemed that her long cold was finally coming to an end, with only a few random sneezes and bouts of drowsiness lingering. "Juby? Are you okay? Is the cold coming back?" Hannah Lee, Jubilation's mother, asked quickly as she stepped out of the kitchen. "I'll make some tea." "Mom, I'm fine. That was just a sneeze." The front door of their modest townhouse cracked open with a deafening crash, splintering wood and scattering shards of plaster into the air like confetti. A flashbang stun grenade tumbled in, rolling across the floor with a metallic clatter. Jubilation's eyes widened in shock, adrenaline surging through her veins as she instinctively leaped to her feet. She opened her mouth to shout a warning to her mother, but the blinding detonation of the grenade cut her off, an explosion of white light that left her and Hannah momentarily dazzled. Amid the chaos, the living room erupted with commotion as a squad of men in combat uniforms burst through the entrance, their faces obscured by sleek black masks. Clad in tactical gear with weapons drawn, they moved as a cohesive unit, swift and efficient. On their shoulders, a patch emblazoned with the acronym MRD stood out starkly in white against the darkness of their attire. These were no ordinary officers. They were former soldiers repurposed as federal agents within the U.S. government's Mutant Response Division, an elite unit dedicated to tracking and apprehending mutants deemed a potential threat to public safety. "Target confirmed," one of the agents stated, holding up a picture next to Jubilation to compare. She was clutching her ears and squeezing her eyes shut. "Take her." 3 men holstered their weapons and forced Jubilation to the ground. "What's going on?" "Let me go. Mom," she cried. The agents ignored her pleas as they secured her hands behind her back. Heavy, reinforced steel cuffs were placed around her wrists and ankles. As her vision cleared, a black bag was pulled over her head, muffling her screams. "What are you doing?" "That's my daughter," Hannah shouted, trying to intervene against the men who had broken into their home. One of the agents swung the stock of their assault rifle into Hannah's face, causing her to scream and crash to the floor. As she fell, her head smacked against the coffee table, rendering her unconscious. At the sound of her mother's pained cry, Jubilation's panic shifted to rage. That anger awakened a dormant power deep within her, and like a firework igniting, it erupted. Sparks of colorful embers danced from her hands, capturing the agent's attention. "Shit. She's using her powers." One of the agents raised their rifle and prepared to fire at Jubilation's head, only to be stopped by his squad leader. "God damn it, Spencer. Calm the hell down." Agent Hamilton yelled and pushed Spencer's weapon away. "Outside. Now." "But, sir." Did I stutter? "Get the hell out and calm your ass. Hirsch. Why the hell haven't you injected the target with the sedative?" "Injecting sedative," Hirsch said as he pulled out an injection needle from a black case. With swift precision, he injected the drug cocktail into Jubilation's neck. "No. And no, Mom." Jubilation managed to mutter before falling unconscious. The agents that had been holding her down relaxed and hoisted her up. With their objective secured, the agents emerged out onto the quiet suburban street, where a fleet of sleek armored vehicles idled, their engines humming softly. Surrounding them, a contingent of heavily armed agents stood alert, firearms poised and ready, eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of trouble. Curious onlookers peered out from their patios and doorways, their expressions a mix of intrigue and concern, as the MRD agents carefully maneuvered Jubilation into the interior of a robust armored truck. "I can hardly fathom it. The Lee family actually had a mutant among their ranks." "Good. It's about time they rid my neighborhood of that damned mutant scum. Finally, my tax dollars are put to good use, came a voice dripping with disdain. I always thought they were such nice people. To think one of them lived so close. It's utterly terrifying, murmured another, eyes wide with a mix of shock and fear. As the MRD agents prepared their equipment, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The once friendly neighbors of the Lee family began to cheer enthusiastically, clapping and cheering for the agents as if they were heroes returning from battle. On the verge of stepping into an armored truck, Spencer raised his arms triumphantly, celebrating like it was a World Series victory. His display sparked another wave of applause, swelling his pride and inflating his already overblown ego. Get in the damn truck, Spencer. Ha! You got it, sir. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the small town in Virginia, the agents of the MRD maneuvered their armored vehicles down the quiet streets. They were heading to one of the agency's secure bases in the United States, where they would prepare to airlift their latest captive to a facility in Nevada. This operation was merely one of countless missions executed by the MRD in the wake of the government's ruthless response to the catastrophic upheaval known as the Sasha Connor incident. In the aftermath of that chaos, the agency was endowed with a chilling mandate to hunt down, apprehend, and contain mutants deemed a dire threat to national security. During this time, they had successfully apprehended over 200 mutants, employing a combination of tactical expertise and advanced technology to keep these individuals securely locked away, often in solitary confinement to minimize any risk of escape or unrest. Jubilation Lee was the most recent addition to their list of captives. The city's crime rate has impressively decreased by 9% with the surge of Atomic's heroic appearances. His presence has woven a sense of safety throughout the streets of New York. A massive inferno engulfed an apartment building in North Manhattan, leaving 5 brave firefighters trapped amid the chaos of flames and smoke. Fortunately, Atomic appeared in a flash, utilizing his powers to quickly subdue the fire and orchestrate a daring rescue, ensuring the firefighters and any trapped residents made it out safely. Atomic's persistent refusals to comply with court summons have state officials raising eyebrows and questioning his true motives. New York's newest masked vigilante, Spider-Man, was spotted enjoying lunch with a heroic figure of Atomic on a rooftop overlooking the vibrant neighborhood of Queens. All attempts to secure an exclusive interview with the elusive red and white superhero, Atomic, have ended in disappointment. Is there anyone who can break through his careful guard and reveal the man behind the helmet? Breaking news. The heroic figure of Atomic was seen making another generous drop of supplies at the Feast homeless shelter this week. This marks the 3rd consecutive month of his weekly visits, delivering essential items like nutritious food, warm clothing, medical supplies, and more, a true testament to his commitment to the community. As time flowed on, a flood of headlines inundated the media, each one chronicling Atomic's latest noble deed or daring escapade. His likeness and reputation blossomed daily, permeating every corner of the city. Even those who had once eyed him with skepticism began to shift their perspective, slowly coming to believe in his genuine desire to do good, but a small minority still questioned his intentions. Police officers, once wary of Atomic and his powers, found themselves gradually warming to the hero's presence. They exchanged excited glances and sighed in relief whenever the familiar sight of the red and white figure appeared on the horizon. Atomic's knack for remembering the names of many first responders only added to his growing stature among those who engaged in selfless acts of bravery without supernatural abilities. As time passed, the citizens of New York embraced a newfound comfort in knowing they were under Atomic's vigilant watch. The atmosphere was charged with a tangible sense of safety, as though the mere sight of a blur of red and white streaking across the sky promised that everything would be all right. 4 months later. Tell me there's something better. Yeehaw. Spider-Man hooped as he swung through the skies of New York. His red and blue costume was a fast-moving blur over the pedestrians below. Go ahead. Try. Spider-Man thought as he flipped and leaped off building after building. The sensation of traveling at fast speeds and falling filled him with adrenaline. How I Spent My Summer Vacation by Peter Benjamin Parker. I can sum it up in one glorious, hyphenated word. Spider-Man. I am the spectacular Spider-Man. Spider-Man monologued to himself and landed on a building's ledge, staring down at the lively streets below. Only one thing missing. It's my last night before school starts, and I could really use some action. Off in the distance, a loud ring from a jewelry store's alarm rang through the night, which was easily picked up by Spider-Man's superhuman senses. Thank you, universe. Spider-Man said as he launched off the roof and launched a web to the building across the street. Two men could be seen exiting the bulkhead on a rooftop, bags full of jewelry in their hands. These men were Flint Marko and Alexander O'Hearn. Did I tell you? One getaway jumped to the next building and we're $1 million richer. Flint said as he and Alexander walked to the rooftop ledge to see the distance they would have to leap to make it across. This ain't no $1 million haul. Not after the big man takes his cut. Alexander said, annoyance in his voice. Ah, shut up and jump, Flint muttered. Alexander moved to leap over the ledge but was suddenly pulled back by white webbing. Flint quickly spun around and lifted an arm to block the harsh red light from above. He looked down and saw a large glowing logo that filled him with dread. Oh, no. Not again. Flint said. Yep, again. What is this, Marko, the third time this summer? Spider-Man said with his fists on his hips as a bright light shone from his belt, displaying a large Spider-Man logo over Flint. He stuck to the side of a radio tower as Alexander tried to escape from his webbed bindings behind the masked hero. Just wait till I get my hands on you, you skinny little creep, Alexander growled as he uselessly fought against the webbing. Spider-Man ignored him and leaped down. Okay, so, Marko, now tell me. The new spider signal. Too much? It's my first night trying it out. And I'm just not sure it screams friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, Spider-Man said as he dodged, weaved, and leaped over all of Flint's attacks. Be brutal. I mean, as a guy with a lot of experience getting thrashed by, well, me. I really value your opinion. Deciding to end the fight, Spider-Man webbed Alexander's dropped bag of jewels and slammed it into Flint's back, knocking him down. Like a spider, Spider-Man webbed up Flint quickly, leaving the repeat thief trapped in webbing like his partner. So, what would you rate it? 1 out of 10 or 10 out of 10? Spider-Man asked. Let me go, you insect. A common misconception, but spiders are actually arachnids. Still, think about it. I'm expecting a full review next time I web you both up. Spider-Man said and began the process of securing both men for when the police eventually arrived. As he was about to leave the scene, Spider-Man paused and turned to the spilled jewels. He stared at them. The thought of taking one filled his mind. Shaking his head, he leaped off the roof and swung away. Ah, the temptation. I wonder when that part of the gig will disappear. He asked and entered a free fall. Harnessing his extraordinary intellect, Spider-Man focused intently on the variables at play, the distance to the nearby skyscraper, the optimal speed needed to build his momentum, and the crucial timing for his launch. With a swift, practiced motion, he unleashed a sharp thwip, sending a gleaming web line streaking out into the night sky. As he swung forward, the world around him blurred with a thrill of velocity, and he arched low to the ground, feeling the rush of air whip past him like a wild tempest. In a breathtaking moment, he launched himself into the air, soaring upward with a powerful surge, the cityscape unfolding beneath him like a vibrant tapestry of life and color. After another hour of patrol, he was about to call it a night but stopped when he heard the wails of sirens. With a web zip, he flew over several buildings and landed in a crouch to watch a high-speed police chase through the streets of Manhattan. Okay, universe. I know I asked for more action, but let's cut it back, Spider-Man said and was about to swing in to help when a brilliant flash of red light zoomed down the street, overtaking the chasing police vehicles. Ah, there he is. Excited to see his friend work, Spider-Man decided to follow at a distance. As he swung from building to building, he watched as Atomic used his reality warping powers to ensure no pedestrians were hurt and minimize any damage to the streets. It didn't take long for Atomic to reach the cause of the chase. With seeming ease, he lifted the sports car into the air with large glowing arm constructs. The police cars came to a stop, and officers stepped out to observe as Atomic pulled the two joyriders from the vehicle. After creating handcuffs on the men, Atomic dropped them off in front of the officers and set the sports car down. He then gave a quick salute to the officers and excited onlookers before flying away. Spider-Man watched all of this from a rooftop. Beneath his mask, he was grinning as he observed his fellow vigilante and friend work. Everything Atomic did was quick, efficient, and calculated. That was awesome, Spider-Man said but jumped when his phone began to buzz. Pulling it out, he saw his alarm blaring, causing him to panic. Ah,
Men. It's that late. Gotta get home. With a mighty leap, he jumped away and swung through the city to get home and get some sleep. He didn't want to start the new year at school sleep-deprived. Floating above the city, Atomic watched Spider-Man swing away with a slight chuckle. 10-31. Burglary in progress on Dash. The integrated police radio in Atomic's helmet buzzed in. After hearing where the burglary was taking place, Atomic turned and zoomed over the city. Wyatt's fingers flew across the keyboard as his eyes remained fixed on his monitor, where unending lines of code came to life. He sat in a plush gaming chair at a wide desk, several monitors positioned in front of him. Empty Starbucks cups were scattered around his work area, and a half-eaten bagel lay forgotten. Behind him loomed several towering bookshelves, their dark wood gleaming under the soft glow of the overhead lights. Each shelf was meticulously organized, filled with an impressive array of books that spanned a broad spectrum of subjects. Prominent titles on coding languages, ranging from Python and Java to C++ and Ruby, were prominently featured, their spines showcasing the colors and designs of various publishers. Adjacent to these programming tomes were comprehensive textbooks delving into the intricate world of computer science and advanced algorithms, complete with diagrams and flowcharts that promised to unravel complex concepts. The shelf also harbored a collection dedicated to artificial intelligence, where volumes explored both foundational theories and cutting-edge developments in machine learning and neural networks. Not limited to just programming, the bookshelf offered a glimpse into the world of mechanical engineering, with texts outlining design principles, dynamics, and thermodynamics, reflecting a deep understanding of the physical world. Next to these, books on advanced robotics presented a fascinating exploration of automation and the future of technology, filled with case studies and practical applications. There were also books covering different languages such as Spanish, French, Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean. Wyatt had immersed himself in these subjects over the past few months, absorbing all the information until it was firmly instilled in his memory, ready for application. Thanks to his high-processing quantum computer brain, Wyatt had effectively become one of the world's greatest programmers and designers. For him, writing code and understanding the intricate workings of various machines had become as effortless as breathing. With his exceptional coding skills, Wyatt could hack into any highly classified and secure system globally to obtain secrets and sensitive information. However, he wasn't interested in pursuing such activities that would ultimately attract unwanted attention. Instead, Wyatt focused on using his programming knowledge to prepare for the future. Almost there, Wyatt said as he completed, debugged, and tested his newest software. And done. Once he completed and compiled his work, Wyatt transferred the intricate code through his advanced servers and thick fiber optic cables that snaked into another room. Standing up, he navigated through his expansive, high-tech laboratory, filled with an array of cutting-edge tools and equipment. All of these pieces of technology were powered by the powerful clean energy provided by Ivan Vanko's own arc reactor. While it wasn't on the same level as Tony Stark's arc reactor, Ivan's design would still offer Wyatt an unlimited source of clean energy for his future inventions and bases. Still, once Wyatt had the opportunity, he also planned to scan Stark's reactor. This second room was a stunning sight, brightly lit and remarkably spacious, with high ceilings that conveyed a sense of boundless potential. Before him stood a formidable assembly of dozens of hammer drones, organized with military precision, resembling a small army poised for action. Each drone had undergone a radical transformation, thanks to Wyatt's visionary redesign, which stripped them of their original Army, Marine, Navy, and Air Force aesthetics. The task of overhauling such complex technology would have presented an overwhelming challenge for most engineers, but for Wyatt, endowed with a formidable intellect and unique abilities, it was merely an opportunity to innovate. He re-engineered the old hammer drones into powerful, streamlined machines, infused with enhancements that made them not only tougher and more resilient but also faster and more agile. His ability to create with pinpoint precision enabled him to manipulate materials and design features that were previously unthinkable. Additionally, the blueprints he had carefully collected during his visit to the Stark Expo with Peter, Gwen, and Harry were essential to this project. They offered him invaluable insights and advanced technologies that enhanced the capabilities of the drones beyond their original specifications. With Ivan's arc reactors added in, they had more than enough power to support any actions they needed to take. The Army drones had been meticulously engineered to resemble the iconic RX-78-2 Gundam. Primarily tasked with defense, search, and rescue missions, these highly advanced units were not outfitted with traditional weaponry like assault rifles or rockets. Instead,
They proudly bore large red and white shields, reminiscent of their illustrious predecessors, symbolizing protection and defense. To ensure they possessed a means of offense while navigating perilous situations, each drone was armed with an imposing adamantium sword, capable of cutting through barriers and obstacles with ease. The Marine drones, on the other hand, boldly embodied the powerful aesthetics of the Buster Gundam. Engineered for mid to long-range combat, these drones were equipped with a formidable arsenal designed for versatility and control. Each unit featured two shoulder-mounted machine guns that offered rapid-fire capabilities, while chest-mounted missiles provided devastating long-range firepower. This combination allowed the Marine drones to engage targets effectively from a distance, ensuring they remained a force to be reckoned with. In stark contrast, the Navy drones adopted the menacing design of the GUF Custom Zaku, embodying a fierce approach to close-quarters combat. Built for rugged terrain and intense engagements, these units carried two large adamantium battle axes on their backs, enabling them to deliver powerful melee attacks. Additionally, they sported a refined version of Whiplash's whips integrated into their arms, allowing for both offensive strikes and agile maneuvers that could disarm and disable opponents in the heat of battle. Lastly, the Air Force drones were modeled after the sleek and agile Strike Freedom Gundam, crafted for superior air defense and aerial combat. These drones featured expansive wings enhanced with several additional thrusters, granting them exceptional speed and unparalleled agility in flight. Equipped with machine gun turrets and missile launchers strategically positioned on their heads, shoulders, and forearms, these mechas could engage multiple aerial and ground-based targets with precision, ensuring they dominated the skies during critical operations. In total, Wyatt had 25 of each unit now downloading their specific codebase into their systems. The mecha designs and paint schemes differed slightly from each other, but they all shared a red and white color scheme with large, plain-to-see atomic logos on their armor, making it straightforward for anyone to see that they were his creations. Wyatt's primary motivation for building an army was to better protect the city in case Loki brought the Chitauri army into Manhattan. Despite the Avengers' efforts in the film, the city suffered significant destruction and casualties. With his new army, Wyatt hoped to reduce both. However, his preparations extended beyond simply building an army. He dedicated himself to reinforcing all the buildings at the epicenter of the anticipated invasion, making each structure tougher and more resistant to destruction and collapse. When he wasn't actively fighting crime every night, Wyatt moved from building to strengthen their materials while carefully considering structural integrity. Currently, he has completed about 35% of the reinforcement for all of Manhattan and expects to finish by late 2011, just in time for the potential invasion in 2012. This timeline assumes that everything proceeds as planned and that his future contributions do not affect the outcome of events. Wyatt turned to a monitor on his right and checked the progress of his code download. It was currently 6% complete. By tomorrow, each mecha should be fully functional and operational. From there, he planned to position each drone throughout the epicenter of the incoming attack in strategic locations. Thanks to his abilities, no one would be able to find the 15-foot-tall mechas hidden in plain sight. Wyatt exited the room with a proud smile, his mind still lingering on his recent achievements. He strode purposefully through the brightly lit corridors of his secret underground bunker, the walls lined with reinforced steel and the faint hum of machinery echoing around him. He took a deep breath as he approached the door at the end of the hall. Swinging the door open, Wyatt's expression shifted instantly from pride to seriousness. Before him lay a vast board meticulously covered with a mosaic of maps, photographs, and meticulously gathered data. Each piece of paper told a story, a chilling narrative of the human trafficking and money laundering operations being perpetrated by various Russian factions in the bustling streets of New York City. Red lines crisscross the maps, marking routes of illicit transport, while photographs capture the faces of known traffickers and their victims. Detailed notes jotted in the margins outline connections and patterns, revealing a complex web of criminal activity that Wyatt was determined to unravel. Over the past 4 months, Wyatt had steadily chipped away at the vast network of the Russian Empire. His efforts were marked by substantial achievements. He had successfully incarcerated 75% of their operatives and dismantled operations worth millions of dollars thanks to the help from the NYPD and another of his newest allies, a certain blind lawyer. The rate of kidnappings in the city had seen a remarkable decline, plummeting by an astonishing 65%. This drastic drop could largely be attributed to Atomic's unwavering and relentless raids throughout the city on various fronts, no matter who was running the operation. Russian, Chinese, Mexican, and any other groups who thought they could sell someone's life away. Yet, despite these significant victories, Wyatt's ultimate goal remained elusive. His focus had been to track down two key figures, Reznov and the Russians' elusive head boss, who lay at the heart of the Empire's operations. However, after months of searching, fighting, and strategizing, all he had managed to glean were their full names. Reznov Antonov, known as the ruthless enforcer who never hesitated to pull the trigger and Luigi's killer. Maximilian Zhukov, the cunning mastermind orchestrating the Empire's nefarious activities from behind the scenes. Though he now possessed these identities, Wyatt was acutely aware that understanding their whereabouts was the next critical step in his mission. Not even with his incredible hacking abilities, Wyatt was unable to find anything on the two men. Whether that be due to them working offline and using only paper or if there was some other force hiding their identities from the online world. The clock was ticking, and every moment spent chasing their shadows felt like a step further from achieving justice for Luigi and everyone else they had hurt. During his raids on their warehouses, hideouts, and gang meetings, Wyatt had grown close to apprehending both men several times. But each time, they slithered out of his grasp. Wyatt was sure that both men knew that he, Atomic, was looking for them at this point, resulting in them acting with extra caution to avoid him at all costs. Wyatt had debated asking Coulson for another favor, but he quickly dismissed that idea. He had to do this on his own. With slow steps, he walked up to the board and glared at the blurry picture of Maximilian and Reznov entering a black Mercedes. Keep running. Eventually, you'll make a mistake, and I'll be there to catch you, Wyatt said. He checked the time and left the room at the sound of his phone's alarm and headed to the base's exit. In a brilliant flash of crimson, no longer the soft reddish pink of his earlier days, Wyatt was now donned in his atomic suit, a testament to his newfound mastery, enhanced abilities, and skills. With a powerful thrust, he launched through the opening panel of the base. Once he departed, the panel closed swiftly, leaving no sign of the secret underground facility that lay beneath. Below him, the Mayanus Reservoir shimmered like a mirror under the sun, its expansive surface reflecting the vibrant colors of the sky. As he soared higher into the clear blue expanse above, the familiar landscape gradually faded from view. Checking the time on his helmet's newly integrated advanced heads-up display, Atomic upped his speed. His suit flashed red before two large glowing thrusters and sharp wings attached to his back, replacing his cape. Drawing inspiration from Iron Man, thick armored gauntlets and knee-high boots appeared over Atomic's arms and legs, further enhancing his speed. In an instant, he shot through the sky with incredible velocity, reaching up to 3,600 kilometers per hour, or a little over Mach 2.83. Normally, the human body wouldn't have been able to handle such speeds, but Atomic was protected by his suit and an aerodynamic glowing construct he had formed around himself, which allowed air resistance to wash over him. Additionally, he implemented a neck and spinal brace to prevent any potential whiplash. Why was Atomic in such a hurry that he decided to fly at speeds comparable to a MiG-31 fighter jet? He didn't want to be late for today's training session with Logan. Again.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.